What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with another DSP video. So today we are going to react to Darkside Phil, A Decade of Failure by Turkey Tom. It is American Thanksgiving right now, and as a Canadian, this is what I'm doing for American Thanksgiving, is watching Turkey Tom. So Thomas, I hope this is good. I've heard mixed things on this, and as I'm on the screen here, Thomas, I'm just saying, edutainment. Please do not attack or harass any of these people mentioned in this video. It's been created for edutainment, not for the purpose of riling up a mob to harass others. Thank you. Thomas, you can do better than that. I'm surprised no one even told me about that, because I've seen bits and clips of this. I haven't seen the whole thing. It's, what, an hour? 2 hours? Oh, Jesus. 1.3 million views, but we'll see how this is. I've heard good things, I've heard bad things, but we'll see together. Let's watch this, have some fun.
We got the man of all hate, the one and only.
Oh, this is from
DSP.
the Texas
Darkside
tournament.
Phil is proof that you can make a living as a professional gamer, even if you're awful at gaming. But
Yeah.
that's far from the only thing he's awful at. From constantly failing to deliver on promises made to his audience, to outright treating them like trash.
So I've had enough excuses. It just seems to me like people are fucking lazy and don't want to come out to the streams.
All while
Yeah, so this is one thing too. So in that little speech there, he's talking about how people wouldn't show up to the streams because he's playing a certain game. But now, DSP goes, oh, I knew this wasn't going to get any attention. I knew people were not going to support this. But I played it anyways because I like it. And then during the stream, guys, why do we have low attendance? Why is no one talking in the chat? Why is no one supporting? He's always contradicted himself. It's always funny how late he is to his streams, but he always yells at people for being late to his streams.
begging them to pay his bills.
With the taxes coming up in April and everything, there's going to probably be times where I'm going to have to appeal to you guys again to try to save my butt.
If
Save the
spitting on a
house.
plate you ate from was an Olympic sport, Phil would
I
be
hate
a
that
gold
red.
medalist.
Oh my God.
Though he would probably sell the gold medal to finance his tax problems and feed his mobile game addiction. This is the 2-decade spanning story
Yeah, I gotta
of the
pull those Hogans.
self-proclaimed king of hate, Darkside Phil.
Choose your character.
Born on April 6, 1982, Philip Paul Burnell grew up on the outskirts of
Oh, this is probably gonna be the
Bridgeport,
FGC
Quite
stuff.
opposite to his life after becoming an online personality. Very little of his early years have been documented. One of the very few stories that has stood the test of time is that of a
Now, that's not entirely true. So if you go to Mr. Stuff and other channels, they show footage of Phil before he was a YouTuber at like barbecues and picnics and all this other stuff. So it's not entirely true, but it is at the same time.
young Phil going to a comic book store with his parents and asking them for a
Oh.
$25 Wolverine toy for
Oh,
his
that's
birthday,
awesome.
claiming that he never asked them for stuff, which, given the behavior pattern we later come to know as Phil's MO, it's very unlikely this is the
I
case.
told
when they
you
take
to
too long
buy
to
it.
buy it and the store runs out of stock for that particular toy, he berates them, and seeing how amped he still gets when retelling the story, it seems he still resents them for this.
So my birthday came and passed, and guess what? My parents go, "We're very sorry, Philip, but we couldn't find the action figure."
This is one of
I
the best
said,
lines ever.
I told you to
Buy
buy
the figure.
Why don't you listen to me?
If we can take his word
I
for it,
love
he
that.
graduated from Catholic school, St. Ambrose, in 2000.
Thomas, did you say if we can take his word that he graduated?
To buy the figure. Why don't you listen to me?
If we can take his word for it, he graduated from Catholic school.
If we can take his word for it. Even Thomas is like, this guy is fucking stupid. I don't think he graduated.
St. Ambrose in 2000 as the valedictorian of his class before going on to study business at Fairfield University. But before studying business, DSP was already getting busy in the competitive fighting game scene, with a particular interest in Capcom's Street Fighter series. In the 90s, he actually traveled across the United States to attend tournaments. Mind you,
Now, there's a little part here that you have to know about. Is at the time he was working at Wells Fargo Bank. That's right. Darkside Phil was working at a bank. And because he had the inside track, he got 13 credit cards, maxed them out so he could go to tournaments, And he even take out was it payday loans or advances. He would take out money advances for like $3,000. Oh, and he also didn't know that credit cards had interest on them.
This is at a time when gaming was still seen as somewhat of a loser thing to be engaged in, so to be dedicated to it as much as he was pretty rare. However, this dedication didn't manifest in exclusively positive ways. Phil often lost his temper and was a generally toxic player, which turned many of the other attendees of the tournaments he participated in against him.
Now, when I go to these tournaments, I say, hey, guess what? Such and such, I've known you for 10 years, get the fuck off this station because I want to play the game. And usually, when you threaten them like that, they get the fuck up because none of them want to fight.
So, you see that attitude right there? So that's the same attitude he uses with his chat. You yell at them. You demand money. And usually, when you do that, they give you money. That's DSP right there. That's Phil Burnell. That's how he believes right at the core.
None of them want to step outside and get their ass beat.
What's worse is that for many years, despite his dedication to the point of toxicity, he consistently lost every single tournament he was in.
For a while, that was true. I was one of the biggest shit talkers in the Street Fighter community. And I would go to tournaments and I would lose. And that's embarrassing.
As he tells the story, when he finally turned this around and started winning, it was to the general chagrin of everyone involved, which earned him the title of the King of Hate, because everyone hated him. The competitive fighting game community by 2005 had largely made the
Now, in Phil's reaction to that, he said, the King of Hate moniker is that he takes the hate against him and uses it to motivate himself, which is BS. It's because nobody liked him. They all hated him.
Transition from the use of arcade cabinets to console ports. EVO 2005, however, proved to be a bump in the middle of that transition. A PlayStation port of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was particularly divisive in the fighting game community.
Yeah, because it's buggy.
With various bugs and technical details that would mar its reputation. The port fell so far short of minimum expectations due to the differences in this particular port that, as a result, various high-level players would end up boycotting the event in protest to its use.
Yeah, and also if you look up on YouTube, Street Fighter 2 buggy port, they actually break down all the bugs in here and how it was unfair and you get like super damaged for certain characters and stuff. That's the only reason he was 4th place, dude. Not even a podium finish.
They went high, however. Phil went low. On his credit score, to be more specific, in perhaps the earliest manifestation of his ability to handle his finances in anything resembling a mature way, a 23-year-old Phil was living in a 3-bedroom apartment he knew he was going to move out of within half a year. In the meantime, he had no idea how he was going to pay his bills, let alone find and pay for another place to live in. With his only job prospect being an entry-level position at a Best Buy, Phil applied his business diploma to the best of his abilities. Instead of buckling up and being frugal, hoping to scrape by until his conditions improved, he decided to take cash advances on every single one of his credit cards.
That's what I was talking about.
$3,000, so that he could travel to and attend EVO. This decision mangled him financially so bad that he spent the next 5 years.
Now, it wasn't just EVO though, it was other tournaments, and this is what I was talking about with the cash advance of $3,000. It still blows my mind that Darkside Phil didn't know that credit cards had interest on them. And he also said it's illegal, too.
Only managing to pay off the interest. Was it worth it? Well, he placed not 3rd, not 2nd, not 1st, but 4th in the tournament. However, since the top 3 players were all Japanese,
and they
Phil
also
rearranged
Wikipedia changed that too through
player, exclusively because it has a nicer ring to it, since there's no real reason to separate players based on their nationality. This gets even sillier when you consider that he's acting like this tournament somehow represented the entire country, which instantly falls on its face when you take into account the fact that many American players didn't participate due to their issues with the port. Other people in the community picked up on DSP.
Oh, this is a classic
comments about
clip right here.
Very kindly.
You got that's the answer I was looking for. You got some idiot named DSP who's a total piece of shit, by the way. I like to get that on YouTube, but this guy thought he was hot because he beat me and Choi in a game that was like, it's like fucking Neo Geo conversion of Street Fighter or some crap, dude.
This may seem like a minor issue, but it's less about the tournament itself and more about how Phil himself behaved afterwards. In later videos, he belittles the other players' issues with the port,
he puts his
saying
head
that
up
they
his
shouldn't have
ass.
expected arcade-like gameplay from a console, and instead should have practiced more.
Instead of about it, which is what it seemed all the OGs were doing, we'll just play the game and learn the differences so we know for the tournament.
Being a sore loser is bad, but not content with just that,
what is
Phil
that?
managed to also be a sore winner.
Thomas, did you make him rock back and forth on purpose like that? Watch
what
this.
all the OGs were doing. We'll just play the game and learn
Watch
the
him rock back and
differences
forth
so
here.
we know for the
Digital
tournament.
effect.
Being a sore loser is
Look at
bad,
this.
but not content with just that, Phil managed to also be a sore winner, because even after he started winning tournaments here and there, he continued to make everyone around him dislike him by behaving like a buffoon for no reason. While there is a video of Phil doing things like loudly and obnoxiously talking over people he was playing with,
Oh, I hope
it
they show the
seems he
money
was
matches in
self-conscious
this.
enough to keep the more egregious displays of his lack of self-control and respect for others to behind the scenes. In one instance, in 2002, he pushed the limits so much that while he was leaving the place he was playing at, him and his friends were followed by the friend group of someone he'd recently lost to, who proceeded to compel him to pay a nominal amount of money for being a general nuisance. According to Justin Wong, another avid Street Fighter player whom DSP had beat before, he had the tendency of being nice to him in person and saying terrible things about him when he wasn't around. However, the most detailed account of why exactly DSP had such a terrible reputation in the community came from another fellow Street Fighter player, Viscant. His Reddit post reads as follows.
I think that's the guy who
This
had
would have
the
been either
feud with
EVO
LTG.
2005 or EVO 2006. Phil had been talking trash for weeks/months before I finally got sick of it. I'm pretty sure I challenged him to a money match and knew he wasn't going
please
to
show
accept.
that.
It was going to be like, lol, fight me IRL at EVO, and I accepted. From here, it turns into what sounds like a total farce, except I can assure you that it was 100% serious, which makes us both look like total, complete idiots. So first, Phil was like, okay, well you have to sign some document because if I kill you, I don't want to be responsible. And I was like, whatever. Then there was an actual serious negotiation over who the ref was going to be, but I don't remember this part either. Then there was an honest-to-God negotiation over weight, and that we were going to have to weigh in and everything.
Yeah, I remember too. This is also the time where DSP was in his WWE phase, where he was all about being a character and a heel, and he wanted to play it up. But he's the only one that was trying to do the WWE stuff. Everyone else was like, who this fucking idiot? He's probably going to jerk off on stream in the future.
Again, I'm not making any of this up. As dumb as this sounds, this absolutely happened. Finally, it was agreed that he wouldn't have to go on a diet to fight me, and it was settled that we were going to fight. It was going to have MMA rules. It would have a referee, and we'd
I
sign
would love to
waivers.
see that.
I was dumb in the mid-2000s. Anyway, so we agreed upon this early in the year, and from here on is where the story gets weird. So apparently Phil was under the impression that this wasn't going to happen and that this was just internet shit talk, but a few people from the West Coast went out to one of the East Coast tournaments and told him that I was taking this seriously and was going to fight him, and had probably been in more gym fights in the past 2 months than he'd been in his life. So one day, Phil instant messages me on AIM and tries to back out. He was like, hey, so how about this? How about we pretend like we're going to fight, and then when a whole crowd is around us, we both do DX cross chops to the crowd. It'll be such a goof. This really happened, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
are you
see, that's
fucking
the
kidding me?
WWE
I honestly
thing.
couldn't believe he was pulling this, and I was still mad about the whole thing, and actually wanted to fight him. I told him I wasn't going to do any of that trolling, but if you want to drop it, then fine, I'll drop it. We can both be adults about this. And that's pretty much what happened. I'm not going to jump him from behind in the parking lot or get in his face and threaten him. From that point on, there never really was any problem between him and I. In fact, the next year when EVO West was in San Diego, I let him stay at my place that year, and when Mike Watson and Jaha were about to kill him in a parking garage, I stepped between them and defused that situation.
Oh, and Jaha tells an amazing story on That Being Said podcast. Go check out the episode with him where he talks about he had like a 300 shield from the movie, and he like bashed DSP in with it. It was hilarious. You really have to hear
Later
that.
would go on to have more serious problems with Watson and Jaha, but I made sure it wasn't going to happen when he was staying with me. I generally don't hold grudges, so even though I remember being really pissed off at the time, by the time the parking garage thing happened a year later, I was over it. The parking garage situation Viskin is referring to is the aforementioned shakedown. But enemies weren't the only thing Phil made in his time as a competitive Street Fighter player. He also made some friends, however unlikely that may seem, and they went on to collaborate with him in the future. One such acquaintance was Mr. John.
Now, one thing I'm guessing Thomas is skipping over. So DSP this year, 2023, when he was doing his React content, dude, he talked about how when that happened, they confronted him in the garage. He dropped to his knees, started crying, and then was talking about how he's an alcoholic and he didn't really mean what he had to say, and he just was a bitch.
Rambo, who sought Phil out after his victory at
Oh, his
EVO
one
because
true
he wanted
love.
to get better at Super Street
love
Fighter
of his
Turbo.
life.
He'll come up again later, so keep that guy in your mind. Despite his infamy in localized gaming communities IRL, Phil found a way to circumvent this by tapping into the realm of online gaming. Even if word got around about his excesses at the competitions, it wouldn't be enough to prevent him from making a name for himself based exclusively on what he chose to put up online. He created a YouTube channel in 2007
Oh my
where he
God.
uploaded random vlogs.
Look at that YouTube. That is a throwback. 0 comments. Fear 2 playthrough. Afro Samurai. God damn, I forgot he played that. Oh my god. So, when is this from? Joined March 3rd, 2007. Signed in 1 day ago. It's a new era, and the King of Hate has been reborn. See below for a schedule of videos in the event dates section. I'll be attending the Screw Attack Gaming Convention this summer, July 3rd to 5th in Texas. Please use the link to let me know that I referred you. It's going to be a great time. What a shill. If you would like to donate to aid in the cost of games, equipment, etc., you can. Send all donations through PayPal to darksidephil@hotmail.com. Donating $10 or more will get you mentioned in a future video. Damn! So even back then, he was begging for money. And you had to donate $10 to get mentioned in a future video. Well, nowadays you only have to donate $1 to get a shout out. Please do not send me random friend requests on Xbox Live or PSN. I do not accept them as they will fill my friends list. I simply can't accept them all. Equipment: 42-inch LG 1080p HD TV, Sony DSP 150 7.1 MP digital camera, Windows Movie Maker. So he has edited stuff. At least at this point, he had something to edit his videos. Standard USB microphone for voiceovers. No, I don't have a Wii. Okay, so this is when he was 26. Influences: Mystery Science Theater. I'm guessing that's going to say Angry Grandpa, Angry Video Game Nerd. So that's where he got his DSP Reacts from. Mystery Science Theater, where they talk over stuff
related to his interest in competitive gaming. But in 2008, he slowly transitioned
Angry
the
Video
channel
Game
into
Nerd.
a rudimentary proto Let's Play channel. Though instead of having the screen captured directly while he played it, he recorded it with a separate device, meaning he pointed the camera at the TV, basically. At the time, Phil lived with his parents and saw content creation as a pastime rather than a job. Not that content creation was much of a job option in the Jurassic period, which was YouTube prior to the 2010s, but even still, he was somewhat realistic about his expectations. Still, that didn't stop Phil from taking inspiration from one of the early internet's
God
most
damn, that was a
adored
huge
legends,
jump.
Angry Video Game Nerd.
Now, as I was a
Look how
Street Fighter
fucking
player, I used to
horrible he
travel
looks
with
compared to
friends,
before.
And it was actually in a hotel room at a Street Fighter tournament where we were just hanging out and having fun.
He looks so
And one of
fucking
my
ridiculous,
friends said,
the
"Did you
hat and
ever
shirt."
see this guy called the Angry Video Game Nerd?" I was like, "No, I don't know who that is." And they showed me a video of this guy who looked like very much dressed up like a nerd, right? He had a
Oh, imagine that.
white kind of shirt.
AVGN looked like a
black
nerd.
Glasses, right? Even talked kind of a little bit high pitched or whatever. And here he is, ranting at a video game, making funny lines, talking over the top, swearing like a sailor. Hilarious. No production values, no budget to it, just him and a camera.
No,
making fun
at
of
that
the video.
point he did
No, I
have
get
a
what he's
little bit.
saying. There is a kind of purity and earnestness to
He had a
early
little bit of
YouTube
production
Kino.
value.
And I use that word loosely because I'm pretty sure AVGN was on another site before he was on YouTube, but I digress. I think Phil took the no production value part a
Yeah,
little
he
too
was
seriously.
on.
He
What was it? Was it Game Trailers and then Screw Attack and then YouTube, I believe.
took pride in posting playthroughs in bulk, with several hours of video dedicated to each game with absolutely no editing involved.
6.3K
On this
in
decrepit,
15
old,
years,
and abandoned
damn.
channel, there are over 7,000 videos, because back then, you couldn't upload very long videos, compelling Phil to split them up into dozens, if not hundreds of individual 10-minute clips. Again, I should remind you, we're not talking about Bandicam
Now,
or
sometimes some of the
unregistered
videos be
hypercam
like
here. We're talking
2 to
about
5 minutes.
actual camera footage with built-in microphone audio capturing all of it, completely raw, untreated, unedited whatsoever. Unsurprisingly, the channel didn't exactly blow up overnight. Somewhat surprisingly, Phil is proud that he spent 3 years of his life doing this for no money and actively derided other content creators who only started doing gaming videos after they began being monetized on the platform. Mind you, this man is 28 years old and living with his parents, and somehow he thinks it's a merit that he makes no money out of playing video games alone with no one watching.
Yeah, 'cause
on
he's-
top of that,
he's
he
an
brags
idiot.
about the passion and effort he put into the videos and his larger upload volume compared to these other, much more successful creators, when in reality, he just has the most videos precisely because of how awfully low effort they are. It's a perfect example of quantity over quality.
Now, the other thing too, so at that time when he was starting out on YouTube, there really wasn't other people doing that stuff. There's a few people here or there, so he had less competition. So it's like, do we watch Darkside Phil fail his way through this game, rage, yell, be stupid, laugh at him? Or do you watch this like 11-year-old yell and scream at a video game and then just throw things at the screen? I guess we're going to watch Darkside Phil. But as more people started doing this, especially with higher production values, more competition, he stayed the same and didn't change and expected everything to stay the same with his money and everything. And people just got better, evolved. The production values went up, the scripts went up, everything went up, even capture cards. And Phil got very jealous because he couldn't do what he was always doing.
Once again, it's not what DSP is doing that's the issue, it's that he brags about it in a really grating way while putting others down. Oddly enough, Phil's first conflict with someone else to be documented online wasn't a result of him disrespecting other YouTubers who were trying to make money off of their content. Instead, it was during a recording of his playthrough of Spider-Man
Oh
Shattered
yeah, with the
Dimensions
neighbor.
when he was making too much of a racket that his neighbor decided to interject. Being the good Samaritan he is, Phil took his neighbor's advice. As it turns out, however, his neighbor wasn't the only person
Yeah,
getting
because he got
annoyed at
silent
Phil.
for like
The
20
running
minutes
jokes
after
surrounding
that.
DSP's online presence actually had a running start, as they were already going on before he had enough detractors, and people in general, seeing his content in order to pick up on it. Though if you are to go back and look at these older uploads, you can catch them in the wild. For example, Phil claimed he suffered from a chronic nasal drip, and because of this, he also chronically snorted loudly into the microphone. Later
Oh
on,
my
in
God,
part
all
due to his
those
tendency
snorts.
to ask for money, this tick of Phil's got him compared to pigs many times. Another focal point for his haters was his loudness, which his neighbor can corroborate, but specifically his laugh, lovingly dubbed the seal laugh due to its ASMR tier exquisite sound design. But let's be fair here, regardless of how entertaining or
Yeah, that's
irritating
fair,
these may
with his
be,
seal
they're
laugh.
most likely done unconsciously by Phil. This is just how he is. He had no choice. However, what he has chosen is to be the real-life incarnation of a character from South Park, as he made a series of videos dedicated exclusively to cataloging his funniest racist...
Oh, I forgot all about this. Yeah. So, DSP's fan-voted top 10 funniest racist moments of 2010 parts 10 and 9. God damn. Because most people, they'd be embarrassed about this. They would hide it. They would delete it. Phil makes videos on it. And at least 10 parts on it. Please note, this video series is not to be taken seriously, but it's only a joke. If you do not have... And it cuts off there. DSP has a huge sense of humor, therefore here comes the funniest racist remarks of 2010. Yeah. For one thing, he's talking in the third person. Second of all, if you have to tell people, I have a huge sense of humor, don't take this seriously. If you do, don't watch this. That's a pretty bad thing.
remarks while gaming. Many people's careers get decimated when they have one racist remark revealed to their audience, but Phil is such an absolute based unit that he himself compiles and posts his own expose material. Around the same time he started putting more effort into uploading to his YouTube channel, he was also hired into a job as a customer service phone operator for a company called Aftermarket Support for
here we go.
Helicopters. Though sometimes he refers to it as HSI, which means Helicopter Support Incorporated. According to Phil's retelling, he constantly worked extra hours and was paid less than other people who did the same job as him, despite the company's actual vice president telling them he was better than his customer service position and that he was to undergo extensive training for a promotion into what sounds like a general managerial role. He supposedly did all of this training while remaining a customer service employee, which he described as equivalent to working 2 jobs simultaneously. After 2 years of this, he was temporarily taken out of his customer service position and placed into that managerial position. And if his word is to be trusted, he revamped the entire company and started saving them a lot of money. And his work was so excellent that
yeah, they're not going to take someone out of customer service and help them revamp the entire company. This is just Phil blowing smoke out of his ass.
they gave him an award. The only problem was his work was so excellent, in fact, they no longer had any use for him, and within 2 months of giving him this award, they laid him off. Does this sound fishy to you at all?
Very.
Because it sounds like the Pacific Ocean to me, and to many other people as well. Well, though we only have Phil's side of the story, it's not that difficult to glean a
God
very
damn, look at
different
those
one from
snort
simply
sacks.
looking into it. For starters, his last job was at Best Buy, and the story with it is also very interesting. Phil claims that he was the leader of a business team and was paid better than everyone else, and that the leadership at Best Buy hated him because he made too much money.
Now, DSP has bounced between two ideas here. He would say he was a team leader, but he would also say, oh, I was just a salesperson. Because whatever benefits him in the moment is what he'll say.
Again, this story is basically that he was so good at his job, there was no reason for the business team, which he was the leader of, to exist, and because they couldn't just fire him, they framed him for violating Best Buy's discount policy. That, or he did indeed get fired for violating Best Buy's discount policy, but I'll let you decide which is more likely. If only they reduced his pay instead of framing him, they would have found out that Phil is willing to be underpaid and work multiple jobs at the same time. Anyway, this is just a segue.
He did that multiple times,
How did he
especially
get a
with
job
Machinima.
at a helicopter support company? The answer is deceptively simple. His dad. As a former logistics coordinator for HSI put it, there was a significant culture of
Not a good example of what all United Technologies offer their employees. Not the easiest place to work for. You work very hard and will not be shown much appreciation unless you are in the Who You Know club. Even though United Technologies offer many perks, such as school, HSI, makes it very difficult for you to utilize these things. You work very long hours, but never seems to be enough. And that's from the coordinator there, former employee.
being rewarded in accordance to who you know rather than what your work affects. Presumably, Phil heard these kinds of complaints from his more blue-collar workers and decided to pretend he was one of them, but the truth was precisely the opposite.
Yeah, pretend
His
is
father,
the key
David,
word.
worked at the company as a customer support manager from 2000.
Customer support manager, manage and supervise a 3-team member, 24/7 aircraft customer support unit with a responsibility for 125 million rotating pool of capital assets and direct P&L accountability for the powertrain assurance program, providing support to the worldwide S-76 aircraft fleet. Launched the first PTA program forecast, improving the time delivery by 35%. From 96 deliveries to 132. Increased sales by 10% in 1 year through direct customer contact, utilizing question-based selling. DSP kind of does that with his chat, the question-based selling. Imagine your dad does this, and he's successful. And then his son is Dark Side Phil. Phil, you probably should get your dad to run your business. Maybe he'll do it better.
2005 to 2007, later being promoted to logistics manager and finally continuous improvement leader, which is noteworthy since this is the exact phrase Phil uses when describing his job and training at the company. It instantly becomes clear that David, having achieved a reputable position in the company, had his son hired as the position he used to occupy. The highest likelihood is that Phil simply transplanted his dad's achievements onto himself. Unlike Phil, his dad is an extremely experienced and highly skilled person, a former Marine with GPAs north of 3.7, along with a bachelor's, 2 masters, and 1 PhD, all
he's
related
the exact
to quality
opposite
management.
of Phil.
His stint managing HSI was just an extension
You sure
of
this
his
is
already
actually Phil's
decades-long
father?
business
Like,
relationship with
biological
his parent
father?
company, Sikorsky Aircraft. Having begun as a mere shop technician and being promoted all the way up to an elite position before becoming his own boss and opening a company of his own. The job he passed down to his son wasn't an entry position, it was something he worked up to for 3 decades. So it's no wonder Phil couldn't fill his shoes even a little bit. All of this becomes particularly egregious when later on in his career, Phil punctuates this story with his complaints and grievances about how corporate America is mean and exploitative to poor little blue-collar workers like him, when he was literally a nepotism hire.
Yeah.
The whole being thoroughly trained for
He's
an elite
never
position
faced
story also
actual,
disintegrates once Phil makes the mistake
like,
of showing the
struggles in
award
his
he
life.
got during a stream. As it turns out, the award for his amazing work was in fact simply a certificate that he had completed something called ACE certification program, which by doing cursory research into the company is something that tens of thousands of people go through at HSI and not a special.
Yeah, so from what people have been telling me, this ACE certificate is mandatory if you like move up in the company or whatever. So certain jobs it's required. It's not an award. It's something that like a program you have to go through to actually work there. But Phil Phil is Phil. He's a
program he
fucking
was
idiot.
assigned to by the vice president himself. In any case, his delusion about his job at HSI is so great that he actually believes that him being laid off caused the company to go out of business.
At that helicopter company I worked for, within a few years of me getting laid off, they went out of business.
Another very conveniently underexplained
I like how he
wrinkle
says
in this
it's
story
because of
is the
him.
detail about him buying a condo so that he could live closer to the job. And I paraphrase, be the guy that shows up during a snowstorm when everyone else doesn't. The problem with his Hustler's University tier motivational grind begins with the fact that he bought a condo while being supposedly severely underpaid. However, the real crux of the condo story comes when you find out that, based on the intentional self-docs Phil gave out in a video tour of his condo, and the
Now, I will say one thing that he probably is not going to say in this is the reason he bought that condo is because he was working with a woman he tried to sleep with. But she had a boyfriend, she rejected Phil, sold the condo to him, so he tried to impress her, and then just laughed. And then he was stuck with that condo.
public records of his dad's address, which are not going to be specified for privacy reasons, it was less than a 10-minute drive from his parents' house. He already lived near his job. All his move did was shave off a mere 5 minutes from the total commute, meaning he bought a $130,000 condo because he wanted to buy one. More avid followers
he
of
wanted to sleep with
DSP
that
have
woman.
added to the in-depth analysis of his condo shenanigans, saying that part of Phil's motivations for buying property so close to his parents was so he could just go back to their house to get meals and his clothes washed, due to him being too much of a man-child to do those things himself. And to be honest, I actually agree with that lifestyle choice.
Because especially when Panda left him, he didn't know how to do laundry or cook or clean. He would go on his Instagram and post pictures of his Hungry Man dinners and talk about how he's struggling because he doesn't know how the washing machine works and he doesn't know how to clean because his entire life he's had other people doing stuff for him. So whether it be his mother or Panda or Cat or the supposed cleaning lady that people talk about or the Middle Eastern lady, he's always had someone to do stuff for him as a maid, which is really creepy, especially when he calls his wife his mother. But that's a whole different story.
Because I am a man baby and I refuse to do anything. Last but not least, it's claimed he at one point admitted to buying the condo from a girl he worked with in hopes of getting with her, only to be notified she had a boyfriend after the deal was closed.
Oh, here we
However,
go.
a lot of the original Dark Side Phil uploads have been privated or
I didn't know he
otherwise
was gonna
unavailable
talk about
through
that.
regular means. So these footnotes have yet to be verified. But regardless of the whys and hows, despite his father's best efforts, Phil once again found himself unemployed. And it was during this period that he decided to pursue content creation full-time, and his hobby turned into his profession. There was only one pesky little issue with this plan.
He didn't decide though. He forced it on his audience. I don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. I'm doing this. You guys got to support me.
Had his AdSense account preemptively disabled for directly begging for his audience to click on the ads that appeared on his videos, something that went against the terms and conditions of the standard AdSense contract.
Please go to my partner channel, The King of Hate HD, and click on the ads that show up on the videos there, because hopefully, fingers crossed.
Phil would later try and distract people from this fact by saying that the real reason his AdSense was suspended.
Yeah, and also remember, to this day, in 2023, as I record this, he is still telling people, I never told people to click on the ads. That's a detractor meme. That's a lie. Even though it's documented. It's on film, Phil. Like, people can look at these videos and what are you going to do? Oh, it's AI generated. Oh, it's a deep fake. No, Phil, this is you just being an idiot.
It was due to a video of his being so successful, YouTube thought he was cheating.
I made this video of me in the shower topless, scrubbing my body.
Oh, those were
basically
absolutely
slurring my
disgusting
words because
videos.
I drank so much, all right?
He was drunk
it
in the
went
shower,
viral.
yeah.
Within a day, the thing had something like 30,000 views, if not more. And honestly, because I was making so much, there were ads on it, and people were going crazy for the ads. I made like $1,000 in a day on that video, which is out of control, right? But that video got so much attention. Guess what? That was the video that triggered YouTube 7+ years ago to think that I was cheating with the AdSense program, and they contacted me and said, "We're kicking you out of the AdSense program on this channel because we suspect that you're sitting there clicking on the video to get ad revenue because you made so much in one day." And I was like, "I didn't. It was the viewers. The viewers went nuts for this crazy video and probably."
But
went
you
over and
told
went,
them
I
to
wanna
do
support
that,
Phil, the
Phil.
underdog just lost his job.
You told
Let's
them
all
to
click
click
on the ads or
on
whatever,"
the
which you're not supposed to
ads.
do. You're not supposed to do that on YouTube. No, you're not supposed to ever try to have someone click on ads or anything. It's supposed to be of their own free will. So YouTube falsely accused me of doing this myself.
That sounds very, very real. In the very same breath, he lets it slip that he asked for people to click on the ads, confirming that this was the violation in question before proceeding to haphazardly justify it. This wasn't the only blow Phil suffered, as a series of playthroughs he was in the process of completing were being uploaded to his channel for the game Splinter Cell Conviction. He got copyright striked, which made the original Darkside Phil channel screech to a halt. In response to this, he created DSP Gaming, his longest running and currently still active
to skirt around
channel,
the
even
rules.
after the original channel was reactivated when YouTube decided the copyright claims were indeed false. Since his AdSense account was still not working, the prospect of being a professional gaming content creator on YouTube was still squarely outside of Phil's purview, so he went to another website, which at the time was one of YouTube's main competitors, Blip.tv. Blip was considered laxer on copyright issues, hence why creators like nostalgia critics Doug Walker also re-uploaded
I hope
their
he
content
leaves in
there.
the
However,
Jew.
Phil's time on Blip was very short, as the more relaxed terms of service made him a little too comfortable. How comfortable? Well, he decided to roleplay as the
here we
last
go.
remaining Nazi during a playthrough of the game Dead Space 2, saying that every enemy he killed in game was Jewish.
This is what happens when you let the Jews do whatever they want. You've let the Jews
This is the real
overrun
Darkside
space,
Phil.
and now look at this. Their greed has had the artifact turn everyone into necromorphs.
Despite being the second biggest creator on it at the time, this probably lost
please
him
tell
his
me that's not
partnership
all
with
of
Blip,
it.
leaving him bereft and upset that he wasn't given a chance to redeem himself by the platform. Just in the nick of time, however, came Machinima.
Thomas, you left out the best lines. You left out the "Hello, Jew," and you also left out the "Big Nose Freak," and then the one that always makes me laugh because it's so fucking stupid and racist and religious is "Turn on the ovens."
Offered him a chance to bypass his AdSense troubles by having the money come into their account. For the sake of full disclosure, an often forgotten about fact is that this wasn't the first opportunity he had to partner with Machinima. The first time a contract was being negotiated was back in 2010, but Phil ruined it by first demanding his videos be featured once a week on Machinima's channel, and when his demands were rejected, he made a video trashing the company for unrelated, and according to Hutch, made-up reasons.
Yeah, and the other thing too is Phil's whole concept of signing with Machinima was that he was the talent, they work for me, they do as I say, so they better do all this stuff for me. And he doesn't realize that when you sign with Machinima or one of these other companies, you're an employee of that company. It's not the other way around. And they also try to set him on like E3 and all these gaming conventions and all these other stuff. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. They offered him all these opportunities. He could have been bigger than he actually was, but he refused to put in the work.
But a year later, Machinima overlooked it and foolishly decided to take him on anyway. On top of that, they would also protect him from any potential copyright issues he may face. Just like that, DSP was back to brute forcing his YouTube success by uploading a massive volume of videos until one of them happened to get a lot of views, much like he used to do on the original DSP account. Alongside the gameplay videos, he had other segments such as Ask the King Q&A, the Week in Preview, which I suppose covered DSP-related news, and the most notorious DSP Tries It, where Phil would, as the name suggests, try new things of all varieties. Eventually, it was canceled, however, due to the negative effects it was having on his health, due to how often the trying involved eating extremely unhealthy fast food. Despite the very rocky road he took to get to this point, Phil finally...
No, because if that was true, he wouldn't be doing it to this day. Just feasting with Phil.
approached something resembling stability, and even a fan base who tolerated his attempts at humor and the incessant burping and snorting straight into the microphone. Okay, that's a little facetious. The Dead Space thing was honestly pretty funny. If you were to scroll through the comments on his condo tours from 2011, people were genuinely happy for
I hope
Phil.
this YouTube
Many
thing
even
works out
living
for Phil. You can make a
vicariously
decent
through him,
living from
wishing
it.
they had an entire condo to be their man cave full of gaming memorabilia. For every person annoyed by Phil, there were many.
Yeah, because at the time, you see him as a success because he's making all this money. He's buying all the statues. He's buying a condo. And he has access to all these games. And people look up to him at that point. He was still a major joke at that time and an idiot. But you also have people like Derek starting to watch him at 11 years old. And we all saw how Derek turned out.
More that enjoyed watching him. There was a moment in time in which it could be said the general audience wanted to like him, and there was a reason to be optimistic for the future of Darkside Phil, but nobody could predict how fast this reputation would sour.
Hate worthless humans? If you worked on this part of the game, you're a worthless human.
joining the dark side.
In the early 2010s, Google reformed its AdSense system, and now it rewarded viewer retention instead of sheer numbers of views. Essentially, the longer someone watches your video, the better.
Yeah,
Just
according
getting
to Phil, it
click
was a
is
switch
not
they
enough to
did
make as much
overnight.
money as someone who gets people to stick around on their video for an hour. This was an issue for Phil since he had a penchant for splitting his videos up into dozens of little
2
tidbits,
minutes and
rarely
25
cracking 10
seconds.
minutes, often being as short as 2. He also refused to improve the technical aspects of his content despite how much money he had already made out of it,
5
and how many of
minutes.
his actual legitimate fans were begging him. By 2011, PewDiePie was already soaring to insane heights of popularity with relatively good quality.
Yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. Now we're starting to get more competition, higher quality, better production, people with actual personalities. Now people are like, okay, do I watch Darkside Phil being a bitch in a video game, failing at every opportunity, raging, being toxic to the developers, or do I watch Markiplier or PewDiePie who have fun with the game, better visuals, actually has a good personality? Which one would I choose? Of course, Phil, being an idiot, thinks, oh, they're all sellouts because they don't do what I do.
Decent mic and even a face cam, setting a new standard for gaming content, while Phil was still languishing with his busted camera filming his screen with little to no editing to speak of. The problem became more and more inflamed as time went on, and Phil's viewers let him know that if he wasn't interested in evolving his format, they would move on to newer and better channels.
Exactly,
of his,
that's
to
what I
which
just
he
said.
either responded with derision, a ban from his channel comments, or both.
Yeah.
In short, DSP
How
made
dare
it
you
clear
criticize
he didn't
me?
want to treat YouTube like it was his job and his only source of income.
You know, 2 years ago, it was about me, waking up, putting my camera down whenever the hell I felt like it, recording for a few hours and uploading the footage to YouTube. Now, it's about having a schedule. Every day, getting up, whether I feel good or not, plopping down on the couch, setting up, live streaming on a schedule so you guys can watch live, then trying to figure out how to schedule out uploads. It actually, I'd say this, it's actually more work at this point doing what I'm doing because it is more like having a regular job. You know, every day I'm trying to do 2 streams.
There you go. That's it right there. So, Darkside Phil wants to be his own boss. He refuses to get a real job for many different reasons. One of them is that he doesn't want to go by anyone else's rules, schedules, whatever. He wants to be in charge. He wants to do things his way. And he doesn't like that. That's one of the reasons, because his ego is so big, he refuses to be someone else's employee.
Because that's the kind of dedication that I put towards this effort. So, you know, sitting down, streaming for several hours, uploading videos, streaming a second stream, babysitting the videos, setting them up for upload,
Babysitting
putting them
the
in the playlist,
videos.
tweeting, keeping you guys.
You don't even put your videos in
it's a lot
order,
of work
Phil.
Versus what I used to do.
Very rarely do you get this clear of an admission of laziness. He often bragged about how much money he made off of his channel, but clearly it wasn't enough for him to hire an editor, get a capture card, or basically anything that would improve the experience for
Yeah,
the
'cause he
viewer.
didn't do
The viewer
capture till,
being
what,
the reason he gets any
2013?
money in the first place. And if that weren't enough, even in hindsight, he sees nothing wrong with his attitude and actually blamed the negative responses he was getting on people being envious of how much money he was making. Due to his plummeting popularity and concomitantly his depleting AdSense revenue, Machinima sought to reevaluate his contract, renegotiating various areas of the
Yeah, he got
partnership.
paid less.
Particularly, the amount Phil was paid for pumping out his content slop was under heavy scrutiny, since Machinima was receiving a lot less from advertisers. It seems that this renegotiation talk finally lit an ember under Phil's ass and got him to at least try and do different things than his usual stick. One of these things was a series called Project 7, which was purportedly made based on suggestions from Machinima and his fanbase. I know this era of YouTube, and particularly content adjacent to AVGN and Nostalgia
No.
Critic, which this definitely was,
No.
is typically cringy and corny, and that's part of the appeal, but I think
No, this was beyond cringy. Like, Project 7 was the worst acting I've ever seen. Worst, like, editing, any special effects. Like, he was trying to be AVGN, but he failed miserably. And Phil, in his mind, thought it was awesome. It was the best thing around. He's going to do DVDs and Blu-rays. He's going to sell everything. He's going to do this full time, but no. Phil is delusional.
this was cutting it a little bit close.
That's right, and you'll never escape my clutches.
Oh, there's the back turn. And there's the two unblurred people. Look at this acting. Look at the special effects.
That's just me being a hater, though, because alongside with this panel at MagFest 2012, Project 7 was one of the very few instances of genuine positivity surrounding Phil's come-up. And for a very brief period, it was almost as if he wasn't completely phoning it in for the money. However, despite Project 7 looking good on Phil's resume, and giving his channel the appearance that he was indeed putting in an effort, the stories surrounding it behind the scenes were dismal. In an hour-and-a-half long video that eventually came out in 2015, only to be taken down by Phil due to it being a PR nightmare for him, his friends John Rambo and Howard, with whom he did Project 7,
he talked
told the
over
truth
them
about how it was made. Mind you, this wasn't initiated by John and Howard, but by Phil himself, who, when asked about the rumors of the two no longer being friends with him, said that real men discussed their problems and suggested that the only feasible explanation for their falling out is that they were jealous of him, as Phil tends to do. All of the videos of Project 7, which heavily relied on editing and storyboarding, were produced by two childhood friends of Howard's, Andre and Paul, who ran the YouTube channel Respect the Pact. As a matter of fact, they were the ones who had the idea for Project 7 and only brought Phil in, presumably because he was looking for ways to branch out with his content. Initially, Phil being the face of it meant that their work would get more eyes on it than usual, which is a good thing. However, they quickly realized Phil wasn't exactly someone who exhibited good faith.
Yeah, because the other thing too is Phil put them all on his channel, so he would make all the money revenue from it. While at the same time, Respect the Pack would do all the work. So, you know, minimum work, maximum profit.
For starters, the editing and special effects, which again were the brunt of the series, was taking up a lot of Andre and Paul's time, especially since Andre was about to become a father. This prompted John to tell Phil to pay them for their efforts, to which Phil replied he had already offered to do so, and they'd turned it down.
That's
turned
bullshit.
out to be a bold-faced lie,
Thank
which was
you.
instantly revealed once John mentioned it to them.
Thank you,
Apparently,
Thomas.
Phil had every intention of keeping every proceed from Project 7 to himself, and wanted to share it with absolutely no one. And before you think this is because of machinima renegotiations or what have you, during the production and publishing of the show, Howard noticed that Phil bought a plethora of expensive man-baby gamer toys, which he's known for decking his house out with. And if that isn't enough to invoke a sense of injustice, a BMW. Notwithstanding, everyone involved in the series contributed out of their own pocket.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, so the only reason Rambo got any money in this is because he said his car broke down, he wouldn't be able to drive the Phil, he wouldn't be able to drive Phil around. And then he goes, okay, I'll give you some money. Like, fucking idiot. The only time he gives money is when it benefits him.
To produce and sell merchandise for it. But only Phil ever saw any of the resulting revenue. The pettiness on Phil's part was so extensive that he didn't even tolerate positive comments about the other participants in Project 7. Upon seeing John
here's the
Rambo's
jealous
contributions
rant.
to the show be considered funnier and better performed than his, Phil rushed to
Please
claim
show
that
the rant.
everything, including their lines, was his idea when they were not. They confronted him about it, and he apologized, but according to John in particular, Phil's apologies meant very little. Over the course of their
You're not
friendship,
gonna
Phil
show it?
tended to either make a slight or
It's a
tell
classic
lie about
moment.
John, apologize when confronted, only to do it again a while after. Ultimately, this is why their friendship broke down. They simply lost all faith that Phil could listen and care about what actions of his made his pretty much only friends uncomfortable or upset, and gave up on interacting with them altogether. Eventually, in 2022, Phil claimed that the reason no payment was made to them for their work on the project was due to the fact that, indeed, the project was losing money. Even if this was the case, and who knows, there's a fair chance it was, he could have just communicated that to them. The fact that he didn't talk about the project failing until 10 years
I highly
later
doubt that.
is at least a little bit suspicious, I guess. Just a little.
The
While seeds were
BMW
being
says
sown for
differently.
the disintegration of Phil's relationship with his friends, he was beginning a new relationship with someone else. Leanna, also known as Panda Lee Games, or just Panda Lee. Immediately, people took...
No, so this happened before that, right? Pretty sure he was already dating her while that happened.
issue with the fact that Phil was 30 years old while Leanna was born in 1993, meaning in 2012 she would have been 19 turning 20. Since Phil's life was indistinguishable from his content at this point, since
She
he would
was so
spend most of his
annoying, by the
waking
way.
hours doing something or other to contribute to the pumping
Maybe
out
I'm
of
wrong
that
about them
content,
dating
Leanna
before.
coming into his life meant that she was bound to show up on the videos as well. However, some viewers took issues with this, as her presence was sometimes considered disruptive to the regular flow of content. Personally, I don't get this very much because as far as I can tell, she was basically the female version of Phil, and close to being as obnoxious and insensitive as he was.
But anyway, yeah, you gotta like expose the Illuminati. They know everything.
What the hell?
More.
Viewers attempted to negotiate with Phil regarding
Yeah, because I remember she was so toxic as well. She definitely was like the female DSP because Especially the way they came together. She was a fan of Phil's before they got together. So she already knew what his attitude was, his toxic nature was, and she was drawn to that. And then especially at that age, she wants to be just like Phil, almost like a father figure. So her toxic nature was amplified by Phil's toxic nature.
Her presence in the videos, but Phil, like he always does, took this constructive criticism as abject hatred and responded exactly how you'd expect him to. When a commenter said, "Don't mind her doing playthrough with you, but these type of vlogs should just be you," he replied with a very gracious, "You're a f***ing idiot." The Leanna situation
definitely
went on
DSP
for a while,
right there.
despite the consistent grumbling of some members of the audience. Until one day, it scabbed over during a stream in which Phil was playing Kingdom Hearts. Panda Lee began provoking the chat by making a series of remarks about the game's quality. "Kingdom Hearts is boring. All fanboys, please cry into jars so I can moisturize in your sadness and rage." Due to this somewhat inflammatory
that's definitely not
comment
toxic
towards a
right there.
beloved franchise, people fell to her goading and began arguing with her in chat. This is hardly a shock, since when people are watching Phil play a game, it tends to be because they like the game. This went on until the crushing majority of chat turned against her, not just because they liked Kingdom Hearts, but because she was actively drawing negative attention to herself for no reason. All of it culminated in her appealing to Phil to do something about people being mean to her in chat, and so Phil conceded.
All right, and now I'm going to tell everyone in the chat I had enough of your bullshit tonight. I see everyone.
Let's see. Kingdom Hearts is boring. All fanboys please cry. Oh, that's what he just read. See. Yeah, that's some toxic stuff right there.
Arguing with my girlfriend instead of talking about the game, and I've had enough. So we're gonna put it in sub-only mode, and now none of you can fucking talk. Since
What
you can't
an
act your
asshole.
age or act mature, and you all want to argue with my girlfriend. Now you can just have no chat. How about that?
Remember,
So,
she instigated
all
that.
of you who are acting immature, this is what you get now. We're putting it into sub-only mode. Fucking idiots.
If people had found her to be a slight, even if infrequent, annoyance before, now she had been seen as a bully and a coward who was prone to instigating conflicts with her boyfriend's audience, only to run back under his umbrella of safety when people treated her how she treated others. She also took on Phil's tendencies regarding participating in flame wars in the comment sections, saying things like, "I get paid for trolls to watch and whine, so I don't see the harm in letting me get paid for them to cry more. Yeah, you clearly aren't getting any, but Phil is and has for over a year now.
Yeah,
Let's
I
be
doubt
honest.
he
Do
got
you think
any
Phil
from
and I
you.
care about what you or
Yeah. So the whole thing is, Panda Lee described herself as a nympho, and Phil has no sex drive. He's overcompensating in his videos. There are videos from hotels where Panda is giving him clear signs. Like, she'll just go on the bed, put her head on the ground, ass in the air, and Phil will go, "What the hell is she doing? Anyways, look at this over here." Like, come on, Phil. Yeah, clearly ain't getting any, but Phil is and has for a year now. Let's be honest. Do you think Phil and I care about what you or anyone else thinks? Because we don't. P.S. My ass is smaller in proportion, so that comment was extremely stupid. Yeah, that shows you. Super stinky pickle. Goddamn.
anyone else thinks, because we don't. If you were in front of me face to face, you'd get a nice helping of my fist punching you right in the balls. Perhaps the
My
most
boyfriend
ironic
is my
moment out of the
business.
whole situation was that years later, Phil actually threw her under the bus and described her as someone who was confrontational
Multiple
and always wanted
times.
to get the one up on everyone else. I mentioned it before, but that's exactly the same trait that made Phil so unlikable early on. So he's not even projecting it onto her. He's accurately noticing why they got
Yeah, it's
along with each other so
amplification.
well. They were similar people, but Leanna did serve a purpose in the larger narrative of DSP. Her presence led to much more concrete displays of disrespect from Phil to his audience. Indirectly, she was the reason many of Phil's fans noticed how comfortable he was, disregarding their opinions and just doing whatever he wanted at their behest. Besides the beginning of Leanna's presence in his life and content, 2012 was also marked by even
Oh,
more
the
examples
crouch
of
jump.
Phil being terrible at gaming, despite it being the core of his job. The most glaring instance was during a video of Half-Life Black Mesa, in which he failed to pay attention to the game's tutorial instructions, proceeded to struggle for 30 minutes in an area of the game because he didn't know how to crouch jump, and then claimed that this core mechanic of the game's movement was actually bugged. Up until this moment, Phil's haters were disorganized and disaffected, believing that no matter how poignant their criticisms of Phil and his content were, they'd just fall on deaf ears. But as 2013 began, this was fated to change. A YouTube account called Evil AJ
here we go.
2010 uploaded
The
the very
Godfather
first entry to a sprawling
detractor
series of
community.
videos that would ultimately spell Phil's downfall as a content creator. This series was called This Is How You Don't Play, and it compiled DSP's playthroughs while highlighting the funniest examples of him being awful at a game. The first one contained clips of Phil playing Metal Gear, a stealth game, like it was a regular action game, and dying a lot in the process. Phil addressed this during one of his long-winded rant videos,
it's the
and
game's
though
fault,
he made
dude.
an effort to claim that they were the
Fuck
dumb
you,
ones for bringing
Kojima.
attention to DSP's playthroughs and indirectly making him money, it was clear that for whatever reason, being called bad at a game bugged him, even if just a little.
'Cause of his
at
ego.
face value, it's just a video highlighting how much he sucks at Metal Gear Solid. It's not that big of a deal, right? Like, somebody could make a whole
And that's the thing too. So him failing as a creator is not because of This Is How You Don't Play. It's because of his reaction to This Is How You Don't Play. If he would have joked around, laughed with it, went with the meme, and played stupid and dumb intentionally in games, he would have been more liked. But no, he has to be the toxic asshole who has his head up his ass.
whole channel on how bad I am at video games. They could make billions. But for Phil, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. The dam was cracking, and many of Phil's detractors, as he came to notoriously call them, saw it as a sign that they could also speak about their grievances with DSP in general. Slowly, the spark created by this video turned into a wildfire, and to an extent it was more popular than Phil himself. Due to Phil's focus on quantity over quality, the views his videos got weren't really attached to him or his brand, nor on how good the videos were. Hence why they oscillated so much depending on what game he played or what the video's topic was. Meanwhile, the How You Don't Play video catered to a very
Why he
specific
knows Zoom with
audience,
sniper
people
rifle.
who didn't like Phil. And
Oh,
there was
God.
definitely an audience for that. It seemed
He
like
tried
Phil
the
felt
sniper
the shift
fight
to his
with a
public image
shotgun.
happen in real time, prompting him to make 2 videos to address the negativity, though he acted as if people actually hated him just because he was bad at the games. The thing is, many people have marketed their gaming videos on them sucking at it and dying a lot, but
Yeah,
DSP was the opposite.
he could have
had
made a
history of
career
branding
out of
himself as
that.
a pro player and of blaming the game whenever he sucked. Part of his ego, part of his persona was that he was good at games. Furthermore, he also had a history of putting other people down for not being good at games. Case in point, Tobuscus. Back in mid-2012, he made a video called Get Competitors' Ads Off My Videos that supposedly was just him being upset that other channels were being advertised for in his videos.
Yeah,
Putting aside the issue that
he
he
had
was
a
still
sponsorship
pocketing the
of
money for these
Madden.
ads, in actuality, the video was a lot more malicious than Phil let on. For a significant portion of it,
Yeah,
he
they
did
don't
nothing
choose
but
which
bash
videos the
Tobuscus
ads go on to,
gratuitously.
Phil.
That being said, please understand,
Love that
disclaimer,
podcast.
This video is not intended to be a direct attack on anyone.
A few moments later.
Your videos suck, you're not funny, and you're not good at gaming. Watch your own f***ing videos. You're horrible. When it comes to gaming, he's not funny. He's not funny.
For starters, this was a straight up stupid move, since if you were into one gaming YouTuber back then, likelihood is you were into a lot of the other ones. So all Phil was doing was angering the parts of his audience that he shared with Toby. But Phil also specifically and seriously attacked him for not being funny and sucking at games, both of which are DSP's whole brand, whether he knew it or not. Additionally,
Yeah,
he
but he's not
suggested
self-aware,
that
though.
Tobuscus, along with other gaming channels he chose not to name here, have found different ways to abuse the YouTube system
Holy
to get
shit.
big. This is
Look at DSP says he's not funny, he's horrible at games and all that. But Phil, look, I know you don't want to be Mr. Views. 3.7 million, 3.7 million, 4 million, 3.9 million, 3.9 million, 3.7 million. That's a successful YouTuber right there.
coming from the man who purposely split his playthroughs into hundreds of different parts so that his total view count would go up, and asked for people to click on his ads so that he made more money from a video. Anyone with a cursory knowledge of DSP recognized he was throwing giant rocks from a extremely thin glass house. Last but not least, he says other gaming YouTubers don't put as much effort into their gameplays as he does, despite the fact that as of May 2012, he was still refusing to buy a capture card to properly record his
it's
playthroughs instead of
2012
pointing a camera at his
that he
screen.
stopped.
In his mind, his decision to not pay anyone to edit and improve his SEO by making decent thumbnails for him is justified due to how stellar his content.
And I guarantee you, if he would have been able to get away with it, he'd be still doing that to this day.
Commentary is. So much so that he describes it as non-stop improv comedy. I'm not going to sit here and act like popular early 2010s gaming content was all comedy gold, but Phil's brand of comedy definitely managed to be even more obnoxious. All in all, it was very clear that Phil was simply seething because there was someone being more professional than he was and making more money than he did because of it.
Okay? And then they hired Toby Turner. to be the guy backstage. He's acting like an asshole. He acts like he's a goofball. He's self-deprecating. Complete, utter flop.
This entire commotion was particularly rich due to how many times Phil accused other people of disliking him out of jealousy, including the creator of the How You Don't Play series.
Yeah, anyone who
the wave of hate
criticizes
towards
him
DSP coalesced
is a
into
detractor,
a decentralized group called Kojima World Order,
Oh,
whose
God.
intro can be seen in many of the detractors' videos at the time. Unfortunately, there was also a downside to Phil being
This
faced
group.
with all of these criticisms. It gave him the opportunity to play the victim. Despite his decline in viewership having begun all the way back when YouTube's ad revenue system switched to retention, he swiftly shifted the blame to Evil AJ and everyone who was on his side, if that could be said, as a side to be on. Finally,
Yeah, anyone
in
who
early to
doesn't blow smoke up my
mid-2013,
ass is
DSP
wrong.
did the unthinkable and bought a capture card, presumably his way of caving to the negativity.
Now, I will say this. The only reason he bought the capture card and was able to set it up and learn and all that is because of that man right there, John Rambo. John Rambo told him about direct capture, convinced him to do it, and then set it up for him and showed him how to use it. Otherwise, he'd still be pointing the camera at the
Also
screen.
known as listening to reasonable advice your own audience has been giving you for years as to what they want to see, or maybe just like what the industry standard is. However, it was a little too late, and the tide had already turned against him for good. Undeterred, Phil went on to cause even greater controversy within his audience when he started the Hardcore Gaming Season giveaway of 2013.
Oh,
But rather
the
than
empty
giving away
boxes.
Actual games, he instead gave away empty boxes.
This is Deus Ex Human Revolution Collector's Edition. Comes with this very nifty collector's box on the inside. Comes with a few things. First of all, collector's edition packaging. As you open that up, you're going to see the game's gone because I traded it in years ago.
This got him lambasted
That's
and
awesome.
unsubscribed from, even by many of his diehard fans. Besides his
Oh, look at
fans,
that hair.
he was also being ridiculed by his peers.
Looks so
Other
greasy
YouTubers
there.
and gaming-adjacent
whole
celebrities
face is
anywhere from
greasy.
2013 to mid-2014 were finding out who DSP was from the clips of him floating around online. PewDiePie and Minecraft
Oh, so
creator Nosh
same thing
were
with,
roped into the
TikTok
DSP
last year with
phenomenon.
Zelda.
Even fellow Blip.tv adjacent lolcow Spoon
This man
was
had
roped
barely
in.
body
Perhaps the most
drained.
notable instance of another YouTuber chiming in with their 2 cents about DSP's
Oh, he
situation
roasted
was
him
Total
multiple
Biscuit,
times.
but not because it was the most aggressive takedown. As a matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. It was one of the most scathing pieces of criticism DSP ever received, precisely because of how generous and understanding it was as far as trying to see it from Phil's point of view. After being mentioned a few times by DSP, Total Biscuit made a comment saying, "If DSP is name dropping me a lot, I don't know why. It's really weird that he's doing that. He's not my friend or colleague. I've barely spoken to him. I dislike DSP's content and his attitude. I've done some terrible things on the internet that I regret, but nothing close to the stuff he does on a very regular basis. He is a really, really bad Let's Player, constantly blaming the game for his own mistakes, and I find that really distasteful. If you make your living playing someone else's work, then the least you can do is respect the work that went into it in the first
especially when he
place.
insults
I don't
the
like
devs
to see
and
someone
stuff.
harassed online daily. I've
The
experienced it
worst is,
myself, and it's put me in some really dark places.
Call of
But
Duty.
to say DSP brings it on himself is a massive understatement. His persona is the king of hate. He does it on purpose, and there's a lot of baggage that comes with being super negative. That's like his only defining characteristic. He's not good at the games he plays. He's a controversy machine, and that feeds his channel. Nothing I've seen him do has caused anything positive to happen. Here's the thing. Insulting your fans is often blown out of proportion. DSP is terrible for this, and most of what he says to his viewers is inexcusable, but let's not pretend that viewers are immune to criticism themselves. They often act like assholes, they're entitled, whiny, and provide a lot of subjective criticism with no constructive use. It can drain you emotionally and mentally to be subject to that kind of stuff all the time, and I really feel like part of that is why DSP acts the way he does now. Sometimes viewers do shitty things and should be called out, but let's be frank, DSP has a long history of calling viewers out for no reason. Rather than try to move away from that, he has embraced it. I'd like to see
he just
DSP
wants
get some
yes
help.
men. Tell him,
Therapy. DSP
"You're
in his
doing
current
great,
form
Phil.
doesn't help anyone, least
You're
of all
the
himself.
awesome Phil.
And
You're my
incidents
favorite
like the I'm giving away
gameplay
boxes thing
streamer,
make me believe
Phil.
he has some problems
Here's
that
some
he
money,
needs to deal
Phil.
with and get past. Because regular people would not consider that a normal, sensible thing to do. I kind of pity him, but there's no smoke without fire, and DSP is a metaphorical arsonist obsessed with burning his house down.
Yeah.
Kojima World
He's-
Order
that's
is
probably
still
gonna happen
hilarious.
one day.
Phil, upon reading that comment, didn't take kindly to it. The entire comment is incredibly flawed. It's obvious he doesn't watch my content at all, and has only formed an idea of who I am and what I produce from the KWO montages. Because watching any playthrough for more than 5 minutes outside of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, you'd know that my content isn't constantly bashing games, game devs, and blaming the game exclusively.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Oh my god. Phil back then and Phil 2023 are exact same person. I'm just saying. And I love it when he goes, guys, that's not in context. They cut me out of context, dude. You have to watch my entire 8-hour gameplay footage for context for the one joke, dude.
exclusively. Yes, complaining about the games are part of what I do, but not nearly 100% of the content I put out. The fact he thinks that the king of hate means that I've embraced being negative about everything, and that's my hook, just proves he has no idea whatsoever what he's talking about. Total Biscuit thinks that his videos are some kind of godsend because he's informing people about new games that you might not have heard of, and frequently he rips the sucky ones a new asshole. He thinks his content is better than mine because people don't buy bad games when they see his stuff. Only I've gotten thousands of messages over the years saying the exact same thing about my playthroughs and or reviews. Just because he puts out one highly edited video and I play through an entire game from start to finish doesn't make him better than me. And honestly, one edited video versus playing through an entire game, which is really harder to do. Seeking therapy because I sometimes get upset over
edited video is
trolls.
harder.
If I'd let it get that much to me, I'd be in a nut house by now. Little did Phil know he was indeed in a nut house, except it was his condo and only had one inmate, himself. Besides him pretending like Total Biscuit was saying DSP's content was exclusively negative, Phil completely sidesteps the treating fans like shit accusation and the empty box giveaway,
Of course,
so he
he's
doesn't
not
have to
gonna
acknowledge there's at least an
own up to
inkling
that.
of truth to TB's comment. Despite the fast approaching instability due to his plummeting in popularity and YouTube's ad revenue policies not treating his content kindly whatsoever, the financial mastermind that is Phil Burnell decided it was time to once again buy a new condo, this time in Washington.
Of course, that's the
Supposedly,
smartest
he had no
thing
outstanding
ever.
debt besides his condo, which he was still paying the mortgage for, and decided that Connecticut was too expensive to live.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go buy a new condo before I sell the old one, so I have to pay for both. What could go wrong with this? Oh, and let's also make it expensive. So expensive that I have to move across the country. Yeah, that'll work out for the business major.
In due to its very high taxes. So much so that it was worth it getting a house in another state, despite his outright admission that he had no prospects of selling or renting the Connecticut condo. In early 2014, Phil and Leanna move in together.
Well, his
Phil made it
aunt
clear
moved
from
into
get-go
the
that he was going
Connecticut
to use his audience's
condo.
money. A lot of it. Again, the issue isn't necessarily that he's asking for support. It's that the reason he needs support in the first place is that he decided to do a very expensive move at the same time his channel was dying. To make matters worse, he tried implying that his lack of money wasn't his fault, but that the slow months he was experiencing was due to the games being released at the time not being good. It even got to the point that he suggested he was going to upgrade his video's quality to 1080p. You know the situation is bad when Darkside Phil is considering doing the bare minimum. But the trolls didn't fall for the pity party. If anything, his pivot to e-begging after his AdSense brute force strategy was no longer functional only earned him even more distaste, since instead of doing the smart thing by admitting this format was outdated and obsolete and changing it radically, he would rather beg for his fans to give him money directly. Before,
Yeah, 'cause
Phil
he's
was
not a
just
shill,
ignoring
dude.
the requests of people who watched him, but now he was setting himself up to inevitably ignore the requests of people directly putting money in his pocket. But tensions weren't rising exclusively on the YouTube front. Over at his fan forum, because yes, he has a fan forum,
My
the users
God,
were
he
beginning
actually
to
called that
become
the king of
upset
hate.
over DSP's tyrannical method of management. Without due justification or warnings, Phil tended to ban users and lock threads without any concern. One infamous quote to come out of this situation
don't
was
ever
Phil
go
saying,
to his
"I can't break
website
the rules, I am the rules."
because
I
he
believe he's
tracks
actually
IP
unknowingly
addresses on
quoting
there.
Louis XIV, King of France, who said, "I am the law, I am the state." His own fan base got so sick of it that even the mods of the forum, who were appointed by Phil himself, took issue with it.
Oh, yeah,
and
this is
tried
when
to
they
strike
locked
an
him out, I
agreement with
believe.
Phil so that by establishing clearer rules, he would no longer act as an administrator and let them do their job. Consequently, he made a post announcing it. Effective immediately, all account names, avatars, signatures, etc. related to known internet memes dedicated to negativity regarding myself or my work are considered trolling, and per forum rules are a permanently bannable offense. This includes the Kojima World Order in particular, but is not limited to it. I'm already seeing accounts that, no surprise, are popping up on the site and doing nothing but spreading unfair and unwarranted negativity about me. I'm all for legit
Yeah,
criticism,
if you don't
but
say
these
anything
anti-DSP
positive about me,
movements are
then
not
you're
that.
banned.
They're one-sided bullying campaigns and will not be tolerated on my site in place of business. If you have a problem with that, contact an admin for immediate deactivation of your account. Thanks all for understanding and moving forward positively. Despite this agreement, Phil proceeded to not uphold his end of the bargain by permabanning a user for what he deemed was unwarranted and unproven slander. The mods of the forum, along with many of the Twitch mods, resigned en masse, saying, "For those who read the settled agreement, this was not allowed. It was in direct violation of our agreement."
Warning issued by Darkside Phil for other in profile. Ability to create content removed permanently, suspended permanently. Note for member, no note. Note for moderators. Every single post from this member is incredible, unwanted. Incredible. I think that says incredible. Unwarranted and unproven slander such as, well, everything you do is because you want more money. No more chances, they are gone. Damn. Well, that's true, Phil.
We tried our best to stay, and unfortunately, we failed in that regard. All the best, the departing staff.
He definitely is
Noticing
a
that even
regard.
his own mods had left him, or in his eyes, betrayed him, a la Julius Caesar, Phil decided to respond on the forums. Mods did not uphold their end of the bargain first, which is why we've come to this. I refuse to pay thousands of dollars for a website where I get personally attacked with slander on a daily basis by the same people. Getting slaps on the wrist, such as warning points, haven't done anything to change the fact
keep
that
in mind,
the
he
forums
still
are a
has this
shooting gallery
forum to
for my
this
head.
day
In the future, I'll either
called
be seeking new forum staff who
DSPGAMING.com
actually
that he
have the
never
time and
uses
willingness
and pays
to
for.
properly moderate, or I'll be downgrading the forum altogether to something more manageable for less people. I guess I didn't really need a $3,000 website, and I set myself up for failure when I got it. Thanks for those leaving, and I wish you all well in the future. For those wishing to stay, let me know so we can talk stuff out. I actually don't know what the hell he's talking about here. There are free forum template websites you can use for free, so unless he's an absolute idiot, he's a really bad liar.
He's an
As a matter of
absolute
fact,
idiot.
There's no reason to even bring up $3,000
Whenever you question
in the first
Phil,
place, so
go
I
with the
suspect he
idiot
just said it
route.
to brag. Unless he's trying to suggest he was paying for the mods to do their job, in which case we're back to lying because they were unpaid. The situation continued to escalate as an administrator ousted Phil.
Oh,
and would
this is what I was
continue
talking
to
about. They
take
locked
over
him
the
out.
site, who in turn canceled the giveaway he was doing at the time due to it relying on fan art that was being published on the site. After the site was flooded with not safe for work images and completely wrecked, it went down and stayed down for good. At least until Phil revived it sometime later with a new, less inflammatory name. Just the DSP forums. When someone entered DSP's
No.
stream as he played Mortal Kombat,
No, that's not what happened. He still had it up. He just changed the name after he dropped the King of Hate moniker. That's what happened.
10, they successfully got him to lose his temper by bringing up the Leanna Kingdom Hearts incident, prompting Phil to spend the next few minutes just airing out his rage.
He's talking about something that happened 2 fucking years ago on Twitch. I mean, could you be more of a fucking loser? Seriously. He really... The reason this guy joined my match was to do that.
Oh, is this
Not
the one
play
where he
game, not
tells
have
people to
fun. He
harass
ruins
them?
it for everyone. Delays. People who want to play have to wait now, right? Because we have to listen to this fucking idiot. I mean, what... Ladies and gentlemen, you have found the epitome of a loser on the internet.
The tirade alienated vast swaths of his audience, and he apologized the very next day in a video on his YouTube channel. For once, this was an appropriate response, even if he was pressured into doing it. Every once in a while, Phil does seem to exhibit a sense of
It's only
clarity.
5 minutes
For
and
example,
44
some of
seconds.
his trolls doxed his new location back in the summer of 2014, which wasn't a very difficult task to do considering how careless DSP was about it. It took a long time for someone
Yeah,
to do
he put
something
it on
with
his
that
business
information, but
cards.
after 5 consecutive days of being DDoS attacked, someone tried to swat Phil, saying he either had or was in the process of murdering his girlfriend and her family. I don't have to explain how absolutely unjustified and dangerous this was, but thankfully, Phil had already been in contact with the police because he predicted something like that would happen. Perhaps because something similar already had happened at some point, but that's just speculation. However, Phil took...
Now, the SWAT nobody actually entered his house. What happened was, and this is all in the police report as well. So, the police came, and over the car PA system, they told him to come out. He came out, they talked, that was it. There was no guns to his head or anything like that.
This is an opportunity to conflate the people who tried to swat him and falsely accuse him with anyone and everyone who had ever made a "this is how you don't play" video or mocked him on the internet, saying that it was the negative vibe people created around him that almost cost him his life. As bad as swatting is, that's just a silly thing for him to do, especially in the relatively serious situation he found himself in at the time. Obviously, not every hater is responsible for the one nut job that decided to swat him. The noise surrounding his name was getting a tad too loud for Phil's liking, but since he was too proud to start paying an editor and putting out decent content to quell the mutiny that the Kojima World Order had created, his strategy to deal with his detractors was to abuse the copyright privileges he had, in part due to being a member of Machinima, to strike the channel of whoever was bad-mouthing him. Once again, Total Biscuit, this time along with Slow Beef, popped up on
I know
Twitter
he
to
claimed a
address what
bunch
Phil
of
was up to
fucking
with the abuse
montage
of
videos of his
copyright
ridiculous
claims. Ironically,
behavior.
DSP was soon going to suffer the same fate he put many people through at this time, when DSP Gaming began facing various copyright ID takedown notices due to his use of fan art in his pre-streams. The threat that this posed to Phil's livelihood was so immense that drastic action will be taken. Hundreds of playthroughs that featured fan art were deleted and privated in order to prevent further strikes. Consequently, the accumulated views on DSP's channel dropped dramatically, which, according to
You
Phil,
can't expect
lowered his
to
ranking
strike
in the
people and
YouTube
they're
search
not going to
engine.
strike you
Not
back.
only was his personality pushing people away from his videos and streams, now his privileged spot in the eyes of the algorithm was going away, and the house of cards was very quickly collapsing. Again, this is not not something I wish on anyone, not even someone as annoying as Phil. Having your livelihood ravaged is a terrible thing. However, the crux of the issue is despite having actively participated in bringing all of this upon himself, he simply wouldn't stop in blaming exclusively other people for the damage done to his channel. Additionally, he returned to directly asking viewers for money, this time with a Patreon already set up, which around this period of mid to late 2015 was making a little over $1,000 a month. Like he always did when it came to asking for money, he brought up the topics of his taxes and bills, saying he had to pay off his house. But it was clear to anyone with half a brain that Phil was not exactly living frugally. He had nothing resembling savings to subsist on, and actually depended on things like the hike in revenue in the latter half of the year
money goes in, money goes out
through all of the debt he had incurred. None of which is explained to the viewer, of course, because that would reveal just how financially irresponsible Phil truly was. Due to the declining ad revenue, Machinima once again renegotiated their contract with Phil and lowered his salary.
Less money.
Instead of looking inward to where he could improve on his content, he decided to strike out at people who watched his videos with an ad blocker, calling them thieves, among other things. Though he'd previously pledged to never again ask for money online, saying he would rather do a different job than be an e-beggar, he presumably reconsidered this when he realized how good he actually had it in comparison to a real job, and he didn't want to lose his YouTube gig. He'd actually ridiculed the mere concept of asking people for money, saying he would feel morally bad to be in such a situation.
Everything is a tax write-off. I don't need money, you know, I don't want that. That's ridiculous that I would have people be sending me money and stuff, and I'm still not asking for that, and I would actually morally feel bad if that were the case, if I were to have to do stuff like that, and I really hope that I never will.
Of course, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah, so 2023, Phil, you might want to watch this. This is your past self telling you something here.
With opening up a Patreon per se, but when you try to guilt trip people into paying for debts that you chose to incur, there's definitely a problem at hand.
Yeah, I spent money, you have to pay me for that.
Either. He spent years mocking any Let's Player who did Minecraft videos, going as far as to say it was only widely played because it was free.
The reason that people are playing Minecraft is because it is free. Guess what, Notch? You're a f***ing idiot.
Once Patreon time rolled around, he changed his tune to simply having missed the game and set it as one of the tiers. However, much like any of the other obligations Phil made to his patrons during this time, he would fail to...
Yeah, and the thing about Phil as well is he's always 5 years behind. So whatever he says he will not do, 5 years later he'll do it. Whether it be React content, Minecraft, certain games, anything he says he's not going to do, light setups, light rings, all that stuff, he'll eventually do.
Fulfill the extent of what was promised, with him only playing 1 of 4 prospective Minecraft sessions due to low viewership. Another incident came when users voted Persona 3 to be that month's Patreon game. After a 4-month playthrough, he reached the final boss, only to rage quit it and not finish, saying it was the worst designed boss fight he'd ever done.
He did go back and
beat it,
He only
returned to Persona 3 later, though we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Another tier on the DSP Patreon was yet another reboot of Project 7, which he promised to do if he hit $1,250 a month. The goal was met, and he took some time off of streaming to work on it. Just 2 weeks later, he indefinitely postponed production, saying to do Project 7 at that time would not make sense, all while refusing to refund the money donated for that specific
purpose. Was a scam.
It was also around this time that Phil decided he would only fulfill his pledge obligations if the pledges surpassed the set goals by several $100, supposedly to counteract the abundance of false pledges he was receiving.
This is the goal, but if you want me to do it, you have to give me more money.
The prospect of another Project 7 reboot reignited whatever was left of Phil's deteriorating relationship with Howard and John, who at this point were very mad at Phil for a variety of reasons, including the fact he monetized a video he made talking about their mutual acquaintance, Scott. The entirety of their back and forth adds up to several hours, but the short of it was that ever since his move to Washington,
this is the same guy who monetized 9/11.
Friendship between Phil, John, and Howard. Since this time, Phil has made clear on multiple occasions how he simply doesn't have the time to invest into friendships, instead sinking his time into his business, something that apparently continues to this day. Much later on, Phil recognized that during this time period, it wasn't just his professional life that was tumbling down, but also his personal life. His relationship with Leanna was deteriorating, and he'd completely lost touch with his best friends from his peak era, both of which are cited as some of the most negatively impactful moments of his life. He also recalls doing nothing but eating fast food and drinking to such an extreme point that he describes himself as being an alcoholic at the time. Pretty sad, and despite everything, you can't help but feel pretty bad for the guy.
Oh, I don't feel bad for him. The downward spiral.
DSP
Chapter
began
3.
2016 with a three-pronged plan. On his main account, DSP Gaming, he'd continue posting playthroughs like he always did, while his vlogs went to the King of Hate Vlog DSP, and his edited videos and montages were uploaded to a third account called KO Gaming.
Vlogs, right?
After a rough 2015 that introduced Phil to the consequences of behaving the way he did, he was angling to outwork his lack of manners and the audience of trolls he had attracted. It was supposed to be his year. Phil would finally become Himothy, until one foolish mistake sapped his momentum right at the very beginning. One of the ways he found to make up for his past shortcomings as a content creator was to return to Persona 3 to beat it, as he was supposed to do a long time before. However,
I
just
still
as his
remember
live
the
stream for it was
tweet,
about to
"The
begin
charm
and
salt
the
is
screen was
real."
set on a message informing people that it would start shortly, he mistakenly left his webcam on and visible to the viewers. In doing so, he exposed his audience to what appears to be his pre-stream preparation ritual, if we can call it that. I'm pretty sure I can't really show it on screen, even though it's not explicit per se, since you can't see any of it happening, but it's fairly obvious based on the fast-paced jerking motions and facial expressions that DSP is cranking one out immediately prior to beginning a stream. As soon as he's very visibly done, the live stream starts and he says,
"Oh, the camera's on. The camera's been on the whole time, huh?"
Almost as if he was knowingly nodding to those who had the displeasure of witnessing the whole thing. As far as live streams go, this comes close to the mother of all of them.
You
it was covered by
include that
Keemstar
clip at
of
least.
Drama Alert, and potentially it's the single most well-known moment of DSP's career to this day. However ironic and depressing
people have
that may
anniversaries
seem.
every
Phil's
year on
first
May
response
1st.
to the situation was to simply ban anyone in stream chat that questioned him on what exactly he was up to during that pre-stream. Due to the stream only having 20 to 30 people on it at a time, and since a lot of people watch live streams in the background while doing something else, like gaming, he probably thought this moment would simply sink into obscurity and be quickly forgotten about by those who had witnessed it. I wonder, in the hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of DSP live streaming and unedited videos leading up to this, if that or something equivalent has happened before, and it just got lost, like tears in the rain. His next move was to berate those who suggested he was such a degenerate as to masturbate in front of his YouTube viewers publicly, before proceeding to claim he was simply scratching his leg. I don't know one single...
So... he was proclaiming that he was scratching his legs in the chat. He refused to tell people he actually did it at that time.
Human on Earth that enjoys scratching their leg that much. And honestly, I feel like if he had just acknowledged what happened and made a joke out of it, it probably would have been pretty funny. He just couldn't do that. The hit to his ego was too big. After the immediate shock and embarrassment wore him down to the point where Phil felt comfortable in ceasing his reflexive lying, about a day later, he embraced it and admitted that he was, in fact, not just scratching his leg. Due to how thoroughly he welcomed the mockery this time around, some people thought that Phil either faked it or did it on purpose in order to get attention to his floundering career. However, as misdirected a person as Phil is, I doubt this is the case, not only because it falls outside of the purview of the typical shenanigans he gets up to, but I honestly also think he lacks the imagination one needs to have that sort of move. It's too
Yeah,
Andy
he has no
Kaufman for good old
imagination at
Phil.
all.
There are way simpler and less risky ways to boost engagement besides public humiliation, and if we've learned anything, Phil loves to self-aggrandize, not the opposite. To be fair, despite how bad the incident in and of itself is, this is one of Phil's most competent bouts of dealing with backlash, as he just very quickly owned up to it within like a day or two. However, despite dealing with this flub minimally well, Phil couldn't look very optimistically towards the future of his career and was very much past his prime. On the 1st of May 2016, while streaming the new Pokemon game, Pokemon Moon, on Twitch, his fans would encourage Phil's wrath as he lashed out at them.
Quite honestly, let me take a look, because I have not looked at stream numbers all day. My God, the stream numbers were terrible. Wow, what happened? Here's the bottom line, and I'm tired of it now. No more excuses, all right? Because the bottom line is people are like, Phil's not engaged in his commentary, and Phil's commentary is boring, and that's why people don't want to watch the playthroughs of the streams. Bullshit. I'm loving this game. I'm voice acting. I'm engaged. I'm commentating on everything that's going on actively. Bullshit. I call massive bullshit on any idiot who says that about either the Watch Dogs 2, which I've been playing recently and really liking, or Pokemon. It's bullshit. I call complete and utter bullshit on anyone who's saying that I'm not engaged and I sound like I'm bored. I'm not. So I've had enough excuses. It just seems to me like people are fucking lazy and don't want to come out to the streams. I don't even know what else to say, you know?
There are few mistakes as easy.
Yeah, because Phil, just because you think you're having fun and it's a great time for you, doesn't mean the audience is having a great time. Because Phil, you got your head up your ass. You think anything you do is the greatest of all time. When in fact, Phil, everyone gets bored of you. If you're not raging, if you're not crying, if you're not bitching, nobody cares. And, of course, the only person that doesn't know that is you, Phil.
to avoid as openly complaining you don't get more viewers. And while it's not a particularly grave one, it shines a light on Phil's
You are
perennial state
fucking
of
lazy
mind.
for
He
not
isn't open to
attending
consider
my
that
stream,
his lack
dudes.
of popularity is due to the lack of quality of his content, or better yet, the consequences of his behavior as an online personality. Phil received backlash from his fan base, which was then compounded by other creators like ReviewTechUSA, who covered his little tantrum on livestream. Phil apologized for calling his viewers lazy, but remained steadfast in his belief that the viewership drop-off has nothing to do with the content itself. At this point in time, the How You Don't Play videos made with clips from Phil's content had completely eclipsed Phil's actual content as far as views and engagement, and Phil thought to capitalize on the community source content. He allowed other people to submit videos to be uploaded to the KO Gaming channel.
Yeah,
and
they had
promised
to be
pay them
positive
with,
for him.
You guessed it, exposure, by having their channel's name in the description. I have to make a small note here by saying that he still hasn't tried hiring an editor to work for him to help make his Let's Play content watchable. It's actually mesmerizing. Anyway, the success of posting community source content on KO Gaming was short-lived, as in 2016 the channel was demonetized for reasons unclear. His situation was already dire as far as channel growth was concerned, but soon things took a turn for the worse.
Yeah, and what he wanted was people to make positive montages of him. He didn't want anyone criticizing him. He didn't want people showing off his failures or him raging at the game. He wanted puff pieces. He wanted to smoke up his ass. And when he put those montages up there, they just bombed hard because that's not what people want to see from Darkside Phil.
Worse. As the adpocalypse hit in early 2017, much of Phil's backlog on his other two channels got
Something else happened in
meaning he could no
2017.
longer profit off of them and
WWE
depended even
Champions.
more on his immediate income. However, the potential for AdSense revenue was stripped away from Phil when his content was deemed advertiser unfriendly, mostly because of the years of content on each channel loaded with every offensive expletive known to man.
Yeah.
Because of this quick succession of unfortunate events, Phil found himself unable to pay for the immense amounts of credit card debt he had accrued, the mortgage for his new home, potentially even the mortgage for his old home as well, since it's not clear that he stopped paying it, and last but not least, the medication he needed for his chronic back pain. This panic over his future led to even greater tensions with—
Wait, he takes medication for his back? I don't think I've heard about that. I wonder what kind of medication he
Machinima,
takes.
who advised DSP to start uploading shorter, edited content to try and amend the declining rates of viewership. However, at this point, DSP is almost a decade into phoning it in, and especially now that he's tight on money, there's no way
he
he's
refused
paying
to
for
do
someone
anything
competent
new.
to edit his slop. Incapable of understanding how the business model of his own business operates,
Yeah.
Phil thinks that Machinima, along with Google, is shafting him out of money after years of his loyal
It's
servitude.
everyone else's
In
fault.
his mind, they owe him something, even if the content simply is
He
not
did
working
nothing
out.
wrong.
Strangely, he seems to believe that the changes
did
in
everything
algorithm were
correct.
somehow malicious in nature, and that they owed him an explanation as to why he was being treated
He's the
unfairly.
eternal
He
victim.
released a video airing out his grievances and basically saying that he'll get to the bottom of it, as if there was something to get to the bottom of. There's no deeper explanation to it, other than his low quality standards put his channel in a bad situation, and once the apocalypse hit, he was too exposed and got the worst of it. Phil obviously didn't see it that way and wanted to get a satisfactory answer as to why he was making so little money, and primarily he wanted an answer to why it wasn't his fault. His tirade heightened the friction between him and Machinima, and finally their partnership came to an end as Phil was fired from the network. Probably one of the only people to ever be fired from the Machinima network. By March 2017,
everyone else just
views
left.
had never been lower, despite how frequently content was being pumped out. Phil's merch on Teespring wasn't bringing in enough revenue to keep things afloat, so he went on the search for a new MCN to be a part of so that he could continue his work. Keep in mind, by 2017, MCNs were basically fake.
Now, what Thomas here is leaving out is at one point he tried to leave Machinima for a troll. So a troll set up this fake company. And it's like, oh yeah, we're going to give you great benefits. We're going to take down all the troll accounts and all the videos. And he's like, okay, I'm on board, dude. And then he found out it was a troll account. And then he had to go back to Machinima. And there was another one. So he had... Oh, what was it? Oh, he was Curse. He's part of Curse as well. And then went back to Machinima again.
Phased out from YouTube. Most people saw them as scams, or, in other words, companies that take all of your money, give you a portion of it, and don't really do anything for you as a result. But here, Phil was still looking for an MCN. Eventually, he found one called Curse, which was willing to take him in.
I didn't know
This
he was going to talk about
on
it.
their part, I should say, since he promptly abandoned them to sign with another MCN, Leveria Media,
Oh.
who offered him content ID.
I honestly didn't know he was going to talk about this. But, yeah. Good research, Thomas.
protection, with the bonus of allowing him to copyright claim the derivative videos of his detractors. Soon after, Phil noticed Laveria's inability to commit to any of their promises to him on writing, and sussed out that they probably weren't going to be able to meet his expectations. So he returned to Curse, which, while less lucrative, allowed Phil to continue his work. However, just as one negative feedback loop is looking like it might stop, another one begins. Phil's domestic life with Leanna became turbulent. Leanna, by this time, had recently gotten herself a job, and as the breadwinner of the family, was often out working. Probably because of the life experience she was accruing while at work, surrounded by adults with expectations of responsibility and maturity.
At this point, he's making probably $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and she has to go out and get a part-time job to support the bills. That is a lot of money to waste.
She began maturing herself, and naturally, muted tensions rose between her and Phil. In early 2017, she tweeted a photo of a fake engagement ring saying, "My co-workers keep asking me when Phil and I are getting married, even though we aren't engaged. Gotta fake it." While seemingly small, it communicated a lot about how their relationship was going. She wanted more out of it. She wanted commitment, expecting Phil to take it to the next level, while he was comfortably inert. While he acted very confused on stream when it was brought up, it appears he quickly took the hint and got engaged to her, though he admitted there was no hope of having an actual marriage take place due to Phil's unstable finances. Despite the proposal, there were various signs that they were adrift and on a fast track to separation. A little while later, Leanna suffered an anxiety attack that was so intense it landed her in the hospital. This flare-up of her condition compounded on top of their already bad situation, since they had to pay for her 3-hour stay in the emergency room, despite her receiving nothing resembling treatment besides a pill, according to Phil. The reason for her anxiety attack is unknown. It could just be from the stress of having a job, but many people speculate it had to do with her relationship with Phil. Soon enough, Leanna did break up with Phil and moved out.
Because of the age gap and the mental placement of each person, they're both in two separate timelines in their life. Like, Phil is in that older timeline, Leanna's still getting to know who she is, and her mind's expanding, and she's starting to realize, oh, what if I do this? I haven't really been able to do that. And like, her mind's expanding.
He denied it for a brief period. He eventually did speak out on it, saying the following: "Since there's been tons of speculation and it makes sense to clear it up, yes, it's true that Leanna and I have broken up. We actually broke up a while ago and she moved out 2 weeks ago. We purposefully agreed to keep quiet to prevent any unnecessary drama on either side, being that we both have public personas and social media presence and we're still on good speaking terms. This is a personal matter between us.
There's no way he wrote this.
And feelings that, quite frankly, are nobody's businesses but our own. I wish Leanna the best. I still talk with her regularly, and we'd both appreciate it if you'd respect our privacy
no way
in this
he
matter. As
wrote
in,
this.
don't bother asking for details because you won't get them. In fact, this is probably the only time I'll really
Someone wrote this for
I
him.
prefer to move on positively and focus on the future. There will
Probably
not
his
be any
mom or
videos made
something.
on this subject. Thanks for understanding." Meanwhile, the trolls took this opportunity to make a phone call to the radio station 897
I remember this.
KACC and requested the song "Baby Come Back" on Phil's behalf.
89.7 KACC, we got a dedication in. These kids and their names, I swear. So, Darkside Phil wants to dedicate a song to Pandali. He wants to dedicate "Baby Come Back" by Player.
Regardless, it was clear that Leanna
Oh,
leaving
you left
hit
off
Phil
the
like a ton of bricks,
part.
perhaps even worse than his financial issues. He began sleeping poorly and began struggling to eat as well, as he used to eat after Leanna made him dinner.
That's
Along
a
with the ending
horrible
of his friendship
picture.
with John and Howard, Phil has described his breakup with Leanna as one of the most negatively impactful things to have happened to him in his life. At this point, he was more of a Twitch streamer than a YouTuber, since he was getting increasingly less results from his uploads, and still, the requests for donations to his Patreon kept becoming more frequent. His trolls found themselves at a crossroads, like a dog chasing a car. They didn't know whether to celebrate Phil finally approaching rock bottom or to mourn how low
that
he'd
was
come.
not
By
rock
November
bottom.
2017, Phil got into another relationship, one that he publicly announced in early 2018 by posting a picture of a red-haired woman tending to his Christmas tree, though her identity was concealed. The trolls' response to this was to quickly start a thread on Kiwi Farms, claiming to be a lady of the night who was hired to pretend to be DSP's girlfriend. And what is perhaps the strangest twist of this?
Yeah, and a lot of times some things just get made up about Phil. This is one of them, the escort saga. There's also the Middle Eastern woman that Phil was supposedly spotted with. There's the guy who supposedly took a picture of Cat, but it was in like 144p. Like, there's a lot of things that go on but can't be actually proven.
Entire story. It turns out the people behind this particular troll campaign were Patrick and Brenda Bronsgeest, a pair of professional scammers who used pictures of young women without their consent to swindle victims of their money. After a decade of their grift, it was their attempt at defaming Phil that caused their undoing. The woman whose picture they used to pretend to be Phil's fake girlfriend was contacted and promptly refuted their story, and just like that, the thread was gone. The account that made this thread was soon linked to another pseudonym, Angelina Capri, who had registered a domain in the name of none other than Patrick Bronsgeest. By the time they changed the registry information to the domain providers, it was too late. Kiwi Farms had already gotten to them. Scouring the internet for any information they could find about them, they came up with various indecent images of Brenda, among other things. Another account linked to Patrick was recorded attempting to provoke Phil during Twitch streams, claiming to be a patron who would rescind his pledge if Phil didn't address the rumors directly. Whether this was a botched attempt to extort Phil, or just a way to kick him when he was already down for entertainment, is still unknown. Owner of Kiwi Farms, Null, would personally email Phil seeking to clear the air around the situation. I love drama. I also really hate being lied to. The escort story had steam to it because the escort identity had tweets mentioning you going back 4 years before the first "this is how you don't play." The escort profile itself had its identity verified by a third party. Every single thing they said was impossible to disprove, but it fell apart in January when she claimed, and no one believed, you had raped someone. That threw her entire story out of balance, and people began looking for what was going on. The truth? They were professional catfishers, a Dutch couple using random girls' pics to get money and Amazon wishlist items. They were genuine fans of yours in 2014, but turned detractor, then decided to use their extensive catfishing profile against you. I know you don't want to visit my site, so this is an archive of the full details on a third-party site. It totally exonerates you. Cheers, big ears. Following this fiasco, Phil introduced his new girlfriend, Kat. Compared to Leanna, who was outgoing and often outspoken to the point of being jarring for Phil's
she didn't last too long on stream.
Refusing to participate in Phil's playthroughs and seemingly being averse to having her photo shared, she appeared so uncomfortable in front of a camera.
Yeah, now, when Phil was hyping her up, because he was talking about Kat before Kat was actually on stream, he's talking about how, oh, we're going to have co-op playthroughs, we're going to do cooking videos, we're going to do all these series together. He wanted someone to replace Leanna, not only as his maid, as person who cooks for him, but also his on-screen co-host. Because Kat was actually a streamer before she met Darkside Phil, and just like Leanna, she was a fan. And then one day, she was having trouble with her OBS. And guess who slides into her DMs? It's Darkside fucking Phil. Imagine getting tech advice from Darkside Phil.
That it quickly became a gag that Phil had kidnapped her as a hostage. Regardless of what was being said by the detractors, this was a good sign for their relationship, since Kat wanted nothing to do with Phil's online presence and what it came packaged with. In 2018, Phil tried to replicate the virality of his...
Now, it's not that she didn't want to be part of it. It's that she did 2 appearances on stream, I believe. The first one was when she moved in and it was a reveal or whatever. The second one was her Halloween stream. So in her Halloween stream, she had makeup all over her face, and people in the chat and Tevin were not very nice to her, according to Phil. And the trolls ruined it, dude. And after that day, she refused to come on stream after that.
Original DSP Tries It Axe Body Detailer video, but it was quickly overshadowed by another controversy he involved himself in. At the time, prominent streamers and influencers received copies of the newly released State of Decay 2, common practice for companies who want to promote their products. Upon realizing he was simply too irrelevant to be viable as a recipient of a free copy, Phil took to Twitter to rant. Those playing State of Decay 2 a full week early are paid shills. They are walking advertisements, not true gamers, and are doing so solely
Dark Souls
for a paycheck.
3 a week early.
I'll be paying for the game and playing it this Friday, just like so many of you, and my reactions will be legit, as always. Within a day, Phil retracted the statement once he realized he himself had received free copies of games such as Fallout 4 and Dark Souls 3, and that would obviously make him look like a hypocrite. So he retracted the statement, presumably because he himself had received free copies.
Look at him in the background.
Hypocrisy, he also suggested using Twitter for business purposes.
Thomas! Why? Why, Thomas? Why do you put him in the background for your shower video? When he looks like he's putting a dildo up his ass.
exclusively to prevent similar situations in the future. Despite his promising relationship with Kat at this point in time, Phil opened up to his audience about his struggles with depression, pointing to the times when he acted extremely stupid and self-destructive as times that he had underlying issues. Years later, it seems he was at least partially admitting that Total Biscuit was right in assessing him as someone, quote,
he'll
unquote,
never admit
obsessed
that.
with burning his own house down. In July 2018, YouTube guidelines for MCNs changed, and now every report on a client of theirs had to be manually reviewed. This proved a very big problem for Curse, since for every stream Phil did, there were dozens of trolls willing to mass report him, creating a massive backlog of reports that someone at Curse had to be burdened with. Because of this, along with Phil's low numbers, they decided to drop him, meaning Phil was once again a free agent. This was particularly impactful on his finances, since the month prior, he maxed out his credit cards to pay off the total sum of state taxes he owed, and without an MCN, his main channel, DSP Gaming, apparently couldn't be monetized. He did find a brief period of relief thanks to one troll, who spent a hefty sum on donations to him, planning to eventually charge Phil back for all of it, but ultimately the chargeback didn't work and Phil got to keep the money. Since he no longer had the MCN's AdSense linked to his main account, Phil had to appeal his original ban on DSP Gaming from 2010 in order to make a living. He started uploading his new content into his
he's in the
long-dormant
Ryu
KO Gaming
thing.
account, but that wasn't much of a fix considering the channel was dead from the lack of uploads and engagement. Phil truly was between a rock and a hard place here. On Twitch, he aired out his frustrations in regards to his dwindling income and a lack of financial support from his YouTube viewers, saying, "I'm gonna make a video about it tonight, asking those who watch on YouTube to pledge on Patreon for real this time. If people watch on YouTube, that's no excuse anymore. You guys on stream, I cannot really ask for more. You guys give me
That's
so much
no
already. But those YouTube
excuse
viewers at this
anymore.
point are just taking for granted, and it has to stop. Those who have watched me on YouTube for 10 years and just take it for granted."
Wow, I didn't even know about this part here. Phil, you are a content creator. Oh, sorry, content curator. They don't work for you, Phil. They don't have to give you money. They don't have to watch your stuff. You should be doing whatever it takes to make them happy. You lost the plot, Phil.
That I'll always be there and need a wake-up call. How am I getting thousands of views on my video and having less than 200 patrons? In the video, he announces that from now on KO Gaming, he will be heeding to people's requests and uploading long-form content, almost as an archive to his streams, instead of hundreds of 10-minute or shorter clips that he used to do. Though this is a concession, it's done very begrudgingly, and it's not timely whatsoever. It would have been significant had he done this 5 years prior, but now it's just too
Yeah, like I said, he's 5 years behind
everything.
everything.
Here that he's more than willing to press his YouTube viewers for wanting to watch something without paying for it. Meanwhile, he's not very eager to press himself to get a real job if his financial situation is as dire as he claims it is. It's almost like he's completely sidestepping his monetary burdens and placing them squarely on his viewers, like they're the ones in debt to him. Luckily for Phil, DSP Gaming did eventually regain monetization. During that year's Halloween stream, after participating on the stream for a couple of games, Kat abruptly left the stream to go out with her friends. Later on, Phil revealed that the real reason she left was because of the excess of trolls in chat that were upsetting her. One troll in particular got the brunt of Phil's ire, the almighty Tevin.
Why does everyone want me to give Tevin a birthday shout out? You guys are fucking lame trolls. What? Who cares if I say happy birthday to Tevin or not?
You just did, Phil.
Happy birthday to my #1 fucking thief who deserves jail time for the amount of fucking stuff that he steals illegally, except that YouTube won't do anything about it, and he knows that I can't afford
He
to
wants
stop
him to
it.
go to jail
Happy
for
birthday,
restreaming
Ted.
him.
Tevin's claim to fame, besides beating Phil in Street Fighter on one occasion, is having tried out the Wings of Redemption playbook on DSP, deliberately calling him Dave instead of Phil to get a rise out of him. Although it didn't catch on as much as Wings' Richard Samuel routine, it was an admirable effort. Besides being responsible for restreaming many of Phil's streams, Tevin had been around for quite some time, knowing of DSP since before 2010. What's interesting is that many of Phil's most prominent detractors at one point were actually fans of him. Quite the Batman dynamic he has going on. Due to all the DSP derivative content Tevin had uploaded, Phil began frequently accusing Tevin of stealing his content, comparing him to a bank robber, among other things. For a brief period, he was the primary recipient of DSP's ire, to the point where the phrase, "It's Tevin's fault," became one of the rallying cries for the detractors.
No, that's what Phil said.
But no matter how much Phil accused others, ultimately, he was his own worst enemy. Despite being a very meek person in real life, according to everyone who's actually encountered him, online, Phil just had conflict in his nature. Some were less personal, such as his brief friction with LOWTIERGOD, as the two were often compared to each other due to both being very toxic Street Fighter players. As a matter of fact, they even fought a match in-game once.
Starts off the match with a scrub cycle pressure, praying that it
work.
Another fighting game adjacent beef Phil was unable to stop himself from entering was when Alpha Omega Sin used him as an example of people who rage quit matches, to which Phil replied by qualifying that when he purposefully throws a match, it's not rage quitting because he doesn't actually quit. A highlight of Phil's response is when his audience outright tells him that to make a response and address it is just going to create more negativity and he should let it go, to which he responds that he's been the bigger man for a very long time, meaning it's okay for him to engage with someone saying something bad about him just this once. I guess that's sort of Phil's general sin as a content creator. He's unwilling to not engage with negativity, which makes for a very depreciated viewing experience for people who actually want to watch his streams. He also got in some trouble
Nobody
in 2019
wants to watch
when
his
talking
streams.
about the passing of Twitch streamer Etika. While he does express sympathy for Etika, he makes
Oh
the
my
mistake
God.
of pontificating about his own situation in 2017, leading many people to claim he was making what happened about himself.
Now, not only that, so he was playing at the time Lost Judgment, and his pre-stream was about Etika. So Phil likes to combine things together, so he put "Rest in peace, Etika, Judgment begins," which Phil is. Oh my God, you're a fucking idiot, Phil.
The video also attracted some negative attention due to it briefly being monetized after it being uploaded, with the first line in the description being a Streamlabs link to give Phil a tip. Honestly, I think this one's not that big of a deal,
Rest in
but
peace, give me
obviously
money.
someone was mad. In a similar instance, about a year later, Phil got himself in hot water again, this time regarding Kobe Bryant's passing.
Oh yeah.
Kobe Bryant passes away in a tragic helicopter crash. My slaves get corrupted and deleted from friggin' nights. What else could happen?
Yeah, that's quite a comparable thing there,
DSP
Phil.
had a history of conflating other people's circumstances with irrelevant or petty things. For example, when Toby Turner was facing some very serious allegations in April 2016, Phil posted a video covering his personal story with Toby. The only problem was, his gripes with Toby were over things like Phil's opinions on his content, or Toby having been disruptive and cringy during
Disabled
E3
by
2011,
owner.
when the topic at hand was Toby potentially being a sex offender. Another example of Phil's pettiness knowing no boundaries involved fellow YouTuber Pro
Yeah, he'll
Jared.
just throw
in
any-
2016,
anything
Jared
out
made
there.
an innocuous tweet saying, "I took a wrong turn on in the internet and ended up reading DSP hilarity, haha, whoops." A whole 3 years later, when Jared was faced with accusations that he cheated on his wife and was exchanging salacious DMs with minors, Phil actually remembered this microscopic dig and spoofed it, saying, "Took a day off from the entire internet, but hashtag pro Jared hilarity was at the top of everyone's Twitter feed, haha, whoops."
Yeah, 'cause
In an
remember, he
unrelated
does not
video,
hold
he outright
grudges, dude.
brags about biding his time and keeping his eye on the bigger YouTuber who had punched down on him, but he made no comment when Jared addressed the accusations himself and largely disproved them. This tweet went viral and got positive reactions from a few other prominent content creators, and Phil had a mind to capitalize on the first morsel of positive online attention he got in the entire decade. How did he do this? Not by pushing out some content to capture people's attention and keep them coming back for more. No, of course not, okay? Instead, Phil deferred back to his standard operating procedure, going over every negative thing ever said about him for the 1,000th time in an almost 2-hour-long video.
Fudging up?
One of the claims he makes in this very long video is that he had less haters now than he used to in proportion to how many genuine viewers he has. Phil was right, but he had no idea why this was and presumably chalked it up to trolls getting tired of his shtick and moving on to something else. Unbeknownst to him and many of the casual
Yeah, when the
followers
trolls
of the
go away,
DSP
you're done for
phenomenon,
life,
the
Phil.
main group of DSP detractors was about to implode. Wings had Sean Ranklin, Chris Chan had Liquid Chris, and Darkside Phil had the Sons of Kojima. Sons of Kojima was a group dedicated to discussing, reacting to, and memeing on DSP. Their name being an intentionally purposeful nod to Phil's complaints about Hideo Kojima's game design decisions in the Metal Gear game he was playing in the first This Is How You Don't Play episode. The first proper group with this purpose was the aforementioned Kojima World Order, who focused primarily on troll compilations. However, Sons of Kojima took it to the next level and added their own commentary and spins on the content to the DSP moments that they compiled.
Now, I gotta say this too, so they were a fuckwad of groups, but I did enjoy their Let's Endures. They were actually hilarious, to me at least. But, yeah, the ending of Kojima World Order, that's a bad moment in Detractor history, but I'm sure Thomas here will talk about it.
Even the original creator of the This Is How You Don't Play series, Evil AJ 2010, was a member. Quickly, the Sons of Kojima became the largest group of detractors online, with one man at its helm, Fred Fox.
Wait, who's this? Fred Fox? Fred Fox?
Now, keep in mind how funny this is. So, Phil was inspired by Angry Video Game Nerd. The enemy of Angry Video Game Nerd is Fred Fox. So Fred Fox goes after DSP, who's inspired by AVGN. Quite poetic.
Fred Fox.
Deriving his name from the AVGN clip you just saw, Fred sought to keep his real identity a close-kept secret, and tried to establish a strict code of conduct in other members of the SOC, and even the general DSP trolling community at large. Many former members cited the group as an enjoyable pastime that was gradually ruined by Fred, who took it significantly more serious than everybody else. His #1 rule was that no one, under any circumstance, could profit off of DSP, supposedly because it would affect their capability of neutral and fair judgment of his actions. Anyone who attempted to monetize their DSP trolling begat a campaign of intimidation and sabotage from the Sons of Kojima, the most notorious example being with the then up-and-coming YouTuber, Ardnas. Ardnas was a rising star in the niche
So
DSP
I think they went after
scene,
Tevin
uploading
as well,
daily
too.
summaries of Phil's shenanigans. The one mistake she made was making money off of her work, something Fred and the SOK were quick to confront her with on Twitter when their content was used. The content in question was screenshots taken by Fred and images of DSP's content with an SOK watermark plastered on it. Ardnas claimed that her videos had ads placed on them by YouTube's copyright system against her will since they were DSP re-uploads. The incident split the detractor community, as people were either subscribed to Fred's ethos or casuals who thought it was stupid to treat it with much more importance.
Yeah, you
and
can't
I would probably
gatekeep
agree with the
DSP
casuals.
money.
Ultimately, Ardnas got her account copyright struck into oblivion after her intro song, which was in multiple videos, was claimed in all of them. Ardnas and another former SOK.
Yeah, my whole thing is, DSP's been making so much money off of trolls. We're the only reason he is still in business. So you know what? If you can make money off of Phil, make money off of him, get that bag, do what you gotta do.
A member had a few exchanges about how Fred was worse than DSP. The particulars around who was responsible for the claims are very murky, but what matters was that this marked a tide change against Fred. For the roughly 3 years that the Sons of Kojima was around, it was involved in more internal drama than DSP himself. In 2015, Phil's main gaming channel, DSP Gaming, had been plagued by various copyright strikes over the use of fan art and pre-streams. Leaks from a former Sons of Kojima member, Kaz.
So Kaz, do you have anything you would care to reveal about Sons of Kojima? Yeah, a few things actually. They knew about the Be Awesome 1 copyright strikes. As the leaks show, most of them did. Actually, I'm sure some were against the idea of directly harming DSP's YouTube channel. Be Awesome 1 himself confirmed asking them about it and then saying it was okay to do it. And the departure of 2 former members goes deeper than simply they moved on. There was more drama than meets the eye. Che had an agreement with Fred Fox about 3 or so hours before being unannouncedly being voted out of the group. His girlfriend left a few moments after. And his friends in the following days, weeks, months. Gabachi goes a little deeper. He wasn't used or anything like that. Although he may seem like a really cool guy at first, he would snap at people over the silliest stuff, going as far as threatening to kill a fellow member after they made fun of his skills as a writer. He also went after 2 ladies in the group, saying nasty things to them and being overall creepy towards the other one. There's no point in hiding any of this anymore, so everyone might as well come forward and give their side of the story. Jesus Christ, that's darker than I actually thought it was. Because I know some of them like harassed each other, stalked each other, and then there was threats and stuff and some sort of blackmail. But this goes even further.
Revealed that it was an associate of the SOC, Be Awesome 1, who had not only created the fan art for Phil, but revoked permission for its use in his pre-streams, with the Sons of Kojima giving him the authorization. The Sons of Kojima had gone from idly compiling and reviewing Phil's content for fame and ridicule to actively seeking to destroy his career. One user, the King of Divas, saw Fred leading the group as the direct cause of everyone in it becoming distrustful of each other, but he was pushed out of the community and punished for his betrayal after the fact with
he has good videos, though.
expose. His private messages, recorded calls, and personal information leaked, all for his non-adherence to the cult of Fred. Another user, Doper, made probably the best assessment of what the group was becoming in a twit longer. Let's be real here. Phil is not Hitler. He's an overweight, careerless 35-year-old man who spends his days walking from one end of his house to another.
He's got the
while
outfit
complaining about
now
how hard
for
his
him.
life is. I've seen way too many people act as if they're on some kind of mission to defeat DSP. Why? What's the end goal here? Get him off YouTube? Get his Patreon shut down? Why is this something that people would want? What exactly has Phil done to you personally that would justify that in your eyes? guys. He blocked you? He banned you from his shitty-ass forum? He called you names on the internet? Take a second look and think about how little that matters in the grand scheme of things. If he wants to run the forums into his own little safe space bubble with extreme hostility to newcomers or folks that don't kiss his ass, well, he has the right to do that since he's footing the bill for its costs. He has no career future, no friends, no stable income. He spends whatever free time he has going to hotels in his own area instead of actually seeing the world and gaining new experiences. His health and lifestyle is nothing short of abhorrent. We'll find out soon enough how badly he screwed his life up. There's no need to try and hasten that process, and neither should you feel happiness about it happening. This isn't good. It's sad. It's sad that a grown man is wasting his own life by acting like a petulant child, crying about how everyone else is wrong and he's right, while banning or blocking anyone who challenges him in any sort of way. If you want to laugh at how shitty his life is or what an asshole he's been, go ahead. But don't pretend you're on some kind of internet crusade against him. Is going on and on about Phil really getting anyone anywhere? Is bitching about him for 75% of a podcast really helping anyone? Phil isn't changing from anything being said on them, and neither are his airheaded fans gonna stop pledging their money to him. What's there to even talk about at this point? Phil says something stupid about something he doesn't know anything about. Phil gets criticized and responds by blocking and then writing another wallow text. Phil whines about a video game not letting him win easily. At what point does it become obvious that it's just the same old boring crap from him? Fred did address this twit longer in the 96th episode of the SOK podcast, but removed it due to the backlash it received. Fred at this point wasn't just after DSP, but openly talked about his plans to dox DSP defenders, which more and more just meant anyone who wasn't as dedicated as he was to wrecking Phil's life. An audio leaked of him mocking his own friends from SOK, and it was becoming extremely clear their operations were nothing beyond a platform for Fred to deify himself and his unhealthy obsession with DSP. Some people claimed he'd spend over 19 hours a day in calls, attempting to manage the increasingly murky Sons of Kojima. The details of this are extensive and documented, but get to the point of redundancy and how ultimately irrelevant they are. Basically, everybody was under Fred's suspicion of being out to destroy SOK. This is what happens when you don't have better things in your life to worry about. When the previously mentioned almighty Tevin had to pull out from participating in the podcast, Fred became paranoid about him to the point that he decided to release Tevin's docs. In an unexpected cameo, Mr. Medicare tried to intervene in the situation and give Fred some advice on how to avoid the implosion of his group and reputation. Really well. Medicare accurately concluded the group had become A-loggers, a term which originated with Chris Chan to describe haters who become so obsessive they end up significantly worse than the people they dislike. Beginning in late July of 2017, a series of leaks regarding the Sons of Kojima, and specifically his leader, Fred F***, began to circulate on forums. Fred continued his relentless campaign of enemy-making in his own community, this time by persecuting a detractor called TXT for having a monetized Twitch emoji of DSP's face. He provided someone with information to use against TXT, who attempted to retaliate by doing the same to one of Fred's underlings before leaving the community. Surprisingly, this was the last straw that broke the camel's back and made people in Kiwi Farms turn against the SOK for good. Fred resented the whole situation and was still pushing for an expose to be made on TXT, but at this point, people within Sons of Kojima were turning against him. Soon,
because basically what was happening is anyone who criticized him, anyone that went against Fred, he'd be like, I gotta get rid of them, I gotta silence them, they can't be saying this about me, let's expose them, let's dox them, let's do this, let's do that. And then at the same time, the other members of Kojima World Order, like, this guy's crazy, we gotta do something about this. Like, any one of us, if we say the wrong thing around him, he could go after us next. So it's almost like a mutiny on like a ship or something.
A massive prolonged leak began with the intent of exposing Fred, including recordings of him intimidating, blackmailing, and pitting members of SOK against one another. In a very strange turn of events, it turned out that in one of his random endeavors to terrorize anyone Fred suspected was a DSP fan, he used a voice changer to stalk and have cyber sex with an autistic man. If I had $1 for every time a lolcow hater manipulated an autistic person into cyber relations via a fake voice, I'd have $2. Which isn't that much, but it is kind of odd that it happened twice. Unsung Hero Bot decided to leak a barrage of incriminating conversations between Fred and another primary member of the Sons of Kojima. On the 6th of September 2016, a former member of the SOK, Renegade Operative, posted a video called Responding to the Sons of Kojima and Conspiracies, revealing that not only had Fred tried to dox TXT and Tevin, but even Renegade's ex-girlfriend after she decided to join him on a competing podcast. A day later, Fred's closest acquaintance,
he's trying to get rid of his competition,
also came out with his story, and given their proximity, this is one of the most damning accounts. Che abandoned the Sons of Kojima due to the group's toxic atmosphere, but in his absence, he had largely taken up caring for his then girlfriend and fellow member of the SOK, Alice. Alice suffered from leukemia, and in 2016, she sadly passed away due to her illness. This is relevant because Fred thought her death was faked, and in scouring through a ton of obituary sites, he only succeeded in doxing Alice along with her parents. This obviously made Che very upset, and in the last...
Like, can you imagine you're mourning like your family member or even like your girlfriend or whatever, or your partner, and then this guy is trying to dox you. He's like, oh no, she's not dead, I'm gonna figure it out, and starts doxing the family members. Like, that's absolutely disgusting.
Episode of the SOK podcast,
and this
which was
just makes
hosted
Phil a
by
bigger
member Fred
victim
was
out of
jealous
this.
no less. Shay chimed in to air out years of abusive behavior from Fred. Null of the Farms would confirm a massive amount of attention being brought to the thread as users flocked to see the collapse of the SOK, as the thread about it hit 23 pages in just 3 days. But in the most cathartic moment of this entire ordeal, the man himself, Darkside Phil, caught wind of the situation. He addressed it in a pretty long twit longer, saying the following. Tons of people are now messaging me to say that Sons of Kojima is being exposed for doing horrible things to me that they denied for years, and the like via a series of leaks. It was obvious the vast majority of the shit was always them, as they are the only group who delve that deep into my personal stuff. I would not be surprised if they performed the vast majority of negative things against me, including the doxing, DDoS attacks, false copyright strikes, prank calls, pizza deliveries, signing up my emails to hundreds of spam mail sites, setting up my physical mail to dozens of catalogs and magazines I don't want, sending me feces in the mail. Yes, all that happened. And even swatting.
What? Someone actually sent him shit in the mail? But then again, it's Phil talking, so grain of salt, he probably never actually happened.
Me. And remember, Leanna's father also got swatted. We knew nobody was safe. When it came time to start making preparations to attend Leanna's brother's wedding in late 2015, we came to the conclusion that, ultimately, if we attended, there would be a strongly increased chance that someone would try to with us and ruin the event. That would have been incredibly messed up. Having someone else's once-in-a-lifetime event get ruined by a swatting. We all collectively agreed to stay home and not attend the event. What did Sons of Kojima do? Well, first they decided to find out the...
No, what happened, Phil, was you stayed home because you want to play Fallout 4 day one and get those views and make that money.
Address and date of the wedding, they, on their own and without my mentioning to it for months, researched and found the event and then spread that info all over the internet. They then decided to spin it that the reason we weren't attending was because I had forced Leanna to skip it so that I could stay home and play Fallout 4.
That's what happened, Phil.
So not only were they the reason we missed the wedding, they then turned their own vile actions into a way to make
You're
me
just
look
trying
bad
to make
after
the
fact.
narrative
It's
your
mind-numbing,
own.
isn't it? It's stereotypical stalker behavior, and when it happens to celebrities, they get restraining orders. This is a textbook case of a bunch of sick-headed, mentally ill, yes, if you try to ruin someone's life you don't know, you are mentally ill, individuals trying to destroy someone they've never met and have zero personal relationship with. It's disgusting and disturbing. For those who are finally seeing the light, they need to look back over the last several years, all the shit they did to me since I moved to Washington, and seriously see if they can live with themselves. I feel bad even when I inadvertently hurt someone, but these people deliberately tried to destroy me for literally nothing. No logical reason. That's wrong on so many levels. My life is already destroyed in a lot of ways, and I'll probably never recover from the financial situation I'm in that they created. Therefore, why dwell on it? So please, don't keep contacting me with juicy new info, as I don't care. Just let me do my daily thing and be who I've always been since day one, and let's keep stuff positive moving forward. Everything else is just white noise that we can block out. Well, Phil is correct about
World
many
Order.
of the things said here.
Got,
to blame the financial situation
have a lot
he's
of
in on
time
the Sons
left.
of Kojima takes a big chunk of credibility away from his twit longer. During the previously mentioned final episode of the SOK podcast, Null asked the present members if anyone had any knowledge of the swatting attempts, and they said it wasn't their doing. While Phil seemed to accurately assess his haters turned stalkers, it didn't mean that he was necessarily right in pinning his assessment to the members of SOK, many of which weren't half as deranged and deserving of that kind of framing as their leader, Fred, was. Speaking of Fred, he soon spoke out himself about the leaks. The things I've said and done in the past were disgusting, embarrassing, and inexcusable. I'm not going to make excuses or say that anyone else influenced me to do them. I take full responsibility for what I did and what went on in that group at the time. When I look at the pictures, I feel ashamed, not even just because they're public now, but because I acted that way. It's stuff I allowed myself to forget about and move on from.
No. What you're ashamed of is that you got caught. Because if you never got caught and you're able to silence all your critics, silence anybody who said anything negative about you, you would have kept doing it. But now that you got caught, now that your group is gone, now that everyone on the internet knows about it, now you're sorry. Now you're taking responsibility. Funny how that is.
That I have to now reflect on. One positive thing I can say is that the things leaking out from 2 years ago are not what the group is today. That is why none of the leaks are recent. A number of things have changed and the vibe is completely different. I want to thank you for your support and your friendship. I have no hard feelings, I can only blame myself. Whenever things like this happen, I try to learn from it. This is no different. We'll see what happens. For now, I'm going to focus on my friends and family. The reaction to Fred's apology was, at best, indifferent. At worst, people, including Almighty Tevin, who represented many of the members of the detractor community, saw it as generic and and simply put, damage control, with no actual repentance to back it up. Speculations as to how the group would fare varied. Some thought there's no way it could survive in any shape and suggested that some of the members of SOK were gladly having Fred be the scapegoat for their misdeeds. However, others saw value in what the Sons of Kojima did, but thought it should be limited to the fun commentary part without any of the officializing and secret-keeping Fred brought with him. Many people discussed whether Fred should be doxxed, which led others to suspect that a vicious cycle was at hand. By hating DSP obsessively, Fred became like him. In fact, he became worse than him. And so if people were to hate Fred obsessively, they'd also become like Fred, and so forth.
Yeah.
Regardless, the leaks continued relentlessly and
yeah, because that would start a whole cycle. Because the whole point was to hold DSP accountable, laugh at his stupidness, because he takes himself so seriously, he strikes people, he does all these slimy, greasy stuff. But then Fred became just like Phil. So now the SOK members are going to do the same thing to Fred that Fred did to DSP. And then what if in that group someone starts acting like Fred, and then they take that person out of the group and they start acting that way towards that person? Like, it's a cycle that keeps going and going.
For years of ridiculing lolcows, Fred became one himself and received his very own thread on Kiwi Farms.
Chapter 5, bringing home the
With
bacon.
his detractors leaping headfirst into a shredder, Phil felt a burden lift from his back. Because of the void left by the Sons of Kojima's collapse, it meant that DSP had less judicious eyes trained on him at all times, and consequently he knew he could get away with more stuff than usual. Besides things like his old condo still bleeding his wallet every month due to the real estate market in Connecticut apparently being on a continuous downturn, Phil admits not only to have taken on more credit card debt, but also loans and borrowing money from his parents to pay the costs of running his business.
Yeah,
he
the
says he doesn't
10-year
talk
plan,
about it because
dude.
he doesn't want to bother people with his problems, but this is evidently not really the case since he has no problem in asking.
Yeah, because the whole thing is, at one point, DSP had a surprise wedding, so he went to visit his parents in Connecticut. And then all of a sudden, a day later, he was married. Pictures all over the place. And at that point, and this is DSP telling us this, he sat down with his mom, and him and his mom agreed that the streaming is not a viable thing. He'll have to get a part-time job because his income keeps going down. And they made a 10-year plan. And that in 10 years, he was going to transition into full-time regular job, but stream part-time. But then, according to Phil, when COVID happened, it changed everything and he realized he could never do that and went back on his word for his 10-year plan to his mom, which, by the way, had attached money to it. She gave him money so he would do the 10-year plan. He basically scammed his mom out of money.
For money and constantly talking about his problems every day. More likely, he doesn't want to speak on where exactly that money is going because it will invite every dormant troll to scrutinize how financially irresponsible he actually is. Notwithstanding, he revealed that ever since his move to Washington, he'd been paying for a ridiculously expensive leased BMW.
Yeah.
He talks
Plus
about
the
having
other
been
condo.
roped into it by the dealership so as not to pay penalty fees for the car he was previously leasing. But he explains this very poorly, so it's difficult to even pick it apart. The most egregious part of the story is that when asked about why he didn't just get a used car, he tries to make it seem like it would somehow be more expensive and inconvenient than just getting the BMW, which is obviously impossible to be true. Just get a Civic, okay? But Phil's financial situation became exponentially.
Oh, and I also got to point something out since he's moving on to the next category. He had to change his oil, but he didn't know that. So he had to bring it into a dealership or some sort of repair place. And his whole rationale is that they never called me to tell me I had to replace my oil. So he wanted the car company to call him to tell him to change his oil. And he blamed it on them for not calling him that he had to change his oil. He's a fucking idiot.
Worse when apparently someone, presumably one of his detractors, tipped off the state of Washington that Phil was an unregistered business operating in the area. Phil hadn't paid taxes for his business operations for the previous 3 years, and all of that was about to come down on his head at full speed. To pay off all of the back taxes Phil had accumulated, he did back-to-back live stream fundraisers on Christmas 2017 and February 2018. But despite having...
So from what I understand, and Phil said this too, it was his tax guy that was doing the wrong Washington tax laws. So basically, when he moved from Connecticut to Washington, he had the same tax guy, but the tax guy wasn't up to date on Seattle or Washington laws, and he did it incorrectly, which caused back taxes, which caused him to pay the government.
Having a minimum goal of $2,000, Phil only raised a little over $300. Undeterred, he tried doing even more special events, such as starting the annual tradition of having the entire week of his birthday having celebratory streams. Coincidentally, his birthday is in April, right around the same time taxes are due in the U.S. During this time, he held an impromptu fundraiser, again to the tune of $2,000, and this time getting a little over $400. By this time, Phil promised to not bring up his taxes anymore due to the amount of ridicule he was getting from both his fans and haters. Later, Phil confirmed he managed to pay off his taxes for the state of Washington, with only his federal taxes remaining. Only problem is his federal taxes amounted to $17,000. So during winter 2018, Phil ran 4 different fundraisers to scratch together some money to keep it afloat. Though his YouTube was simply doomed, as we've previously discussed, his Twitch account wasn't. During this period, he went from 517 subs to over 1,800, most of which is thanks to one user who gifted over 1,000 subs during his streams.
Oh, I
see. The total
see.
amount donated through gifted subscriptions amounted to a little over $5,000, which Phil got half of, as is standard operating procedure on Twitch. This, plus Twitch bits, his Patreon money, what was left of the YouTube ad revenue, and the odd tip, actually made things look slightly hopeful. The only stain on this relatively positive moment was that Phil, despite his previous claims that he used to be an alcoholic, decided to spend the Christmas fundraiser of 2018 indulging in hefty amounts of alcohol, which prompted him to become noticeably more neurotic the drunker he got. Luckily, he managed to drift by without causing any major havoc online. Later, he announced that
And that's the other thing too, so he always says he's a former alcoholic. The problem is there's no such thing. So once you have an addiction to alcohol, you're always an alcoholic. That's why it's called a recovering alcoholic, because you never recover. You should, especially if you know in the past or currently you have a drinking problem, you don't touch that stuff at all. You don't drink nothing. But Phil, you know, he's the know-it-all. He knows better than everyone else.
Was actually $17,000, as to cover the expenses for his tax attorney. April 2018 rolled around, and during the main event of birthday week, Phil managed to receive a total of $1,300 in tips. For the rest of the amount he owed, he made a deal with his parents. They would pay for his debts, but he would have to set out a 10-year plan to get his finances in order and keep them there. That was just one of many demands made by Phil's parents to teach him some fiscal responsibility. Another fundraiser was done in August of 2019.
Imagine being in your late 30s and your parents have to show you how to be financially responsible.
Positive announcement was going to be made. Once the goal was hit, it turned out he just
got Jasper.
He alluded to a second goal reward, which was immediately hit when a user donated a whopping entire $1,000 in one.
Yeah, so first of all, people heard Jasper on the streams before this, and they said, "Oh, you got a cat, you got a cat." And Phil said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about, ban, ban, ban." And then he made a deal with somebody to donate $1,000 to hit the goal. But he didn't tell them, like, he didn't tell the stream until, like, the end of the stream, because he wanted to bait more tips.
Tip, only for Phil to then explain that there was actually no second goal and that there'd been some miscommunication. It doesn't seem this was entirely malicious in nature, more so a manifestation of Phil's lack of communication skills. Soon after, Phil did an interview with fellow YouTuber The Quartering, though many felt that it fell short of expectations, since Quartering wasn't pursuing the more pressing questions and more so taking it easy on Phil over the course of it. The more success in getting people to donate Phil was having, the more he was seeing little bits of trouble start to surface again. In another situation, a longtime viewer and supporter of DSP, DJ Runo, donated the $20
I remember
that
this.
would be necessary for Phil to buy Untitled Goose Game, which Runo wanted to see him play. Phil thanked him very much for his generosity and eventually said he would buy it and play it the following week. However, the very next day, Phil took to his stream to say he didn't have the money to buy the game and was too poor to buy anything, asking for his viewers to donate him shop credits either for Nintendo or PSN. Unsurprisingly, this caused some commotion, and Runo tried to get...
Yeah, because what happened, the timeline was DJ Runo donated $20 specifically for Untitled Goose Game. Phil said, "Yes, I can do that," and then said, "Oh, I can't buy it, I had to pay bills." So he took his money, paid the bills under the pretense of, "Oh, I'm gonna play the game, I'm gonna buy it," and said, "Oh yeah, give me that $20, I'll buy the game, we'll play it." "Oh, I paid my bills, I can't play it." it was a scam.
His money back upon discovering that Phil wasn't going to play what he had gotten paid for. The more generous members of the chat deduced that since his PayPal was connected directly to his extremely overdrafted bank account, the money got swallowed up by Phil's debt before he could do anything with it. Confusion was only made even worse when Phil added Untitled Goose Game to his stream schedule for the month of October, following the end of his late stream at about 10 p.m. on the 7th of October. Later that same night, a post was made on Phil's forums
DSP pocketed my $20.
DSP pocketed my $20 for a game. It read, I need my money back, but he's banning everybody that's bringing it up. I'm just going to go through PayPal and save the headache of lies I will be told by him. I've long knew about Phil's dishonesty, especially when it comes to money, but I donated anyways because I wanted to see him play the game. I won't be an idiot again. Phil did not take kindly to this thread, changing the subject of it to entitled moron tries to fraudulently report DSP for something that didn't happen. The thread. Edited title. He also posted in it himself saying, so you've made an ass of yourself. You never contacted me directly about this, but instead apparently decided to post stuff up here, talk to detractors, complain to Twitch, and act like a general drama-filled dick. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. But you really blew it this time. I was checking my emails an hour ago during my break between
look
streams.
how toxic
I saw that
this
you
guy
sent me
is.
a message on PayPal. In the message, you complained that you'd given me $20 to buy a game, and that I'd now said I wasn't going to buy it, but that if people still wanted me to play it, you'd have to send Nintendo credits. And you didn't want to pay twice, so you were requesting your money back. I immediately returned your funds and I raised
pay me
tips
twice
on
for a
today's Borderlands
game
3 stream because that's all I have, and apologize that this was the situation I'm in. All money I raise has to go to bills for important stuff, like keeping the electricity and internet on, to say the least. So then I check my Twitter and the forums and I see this. Instead of actually talking to me like, man, you apparently are trying to report to Twitch using...
So, I don't know if he's going to get into this, but apparently the one that was on the forums was a fake DJ Runo that was just trolling him. So it wasn't actually the real DJ Runo.
Video evidence that was ripped from my streams by detractors. Guess what? That's not what a man or a fan does. You had a knee-jerk reaction instead of acting rationally, and now everything you've done was in vain because 1, you have your money back, 2, I haven't violated any rules or anything, 3, you just exposed yourself as a complete asshole. The best part is, I didn't go off when anyone asked about Untitled Goose Game. I didn't see anyone ask at all. I was angry that idiots kept asking for Code Vein / Astral Chain after I'd repeatedly explained I cannot afford any games right now.
He'll
The
never
subject
play
literally
Code
never
Vein.
came, but you're a gullible idiot who apparently believes what detractors say about me. Congrats, you're today's biggest idiot. So you only contribute to me to get what you want rather than actually caring about me as a person or a content creator. Well, you can keep your money then, and you can say goodbye because I certainly don't need entitled, toxic people trying to ruin my life and my business over $20 because you can't talk to me like a respectful human. During a chill stream where he played Minecraft, Phil would spend over 30 minutes ranting about the situation, including insulting DJ
Papa Vera,
Runo
Papa
throughout
Vera,
for
no,
his
no,
insubordination.
Papa Vera.
About 8 hours after the creation of the original thread, the actual DJ Runo, as opposed to the
so he goes
imposter
into
who made
this.
the first post about the situation, made a thread titled WTF is even going on, wherein he said, just to clarify what actually happened, I was pissed about Phil because I sure felt cheated. Phil did refund me the money immediately. I did not report Phil to either PayPal or Twitch. I was hoping Phil would realize himself that the account on the forum at least was complete BS, since it was just freshly made, and if that doesn't shout fake, I don't know what does. I hope clearing this up with this forum account that exists for over 4.5 years means something at least. If I thought Phil was as hit as the post I apparently made, why would I have watched him for over 10 years? Why would I cheer or donate frequently? Why would I be subscribed for over 2 years? I can understand Phil's reaction since basically 90% of his life is surrounded by detractor garbage, but come on, Phil. You must admit that you could have figured out yourself that the things I said / did over the years doesn't add up to the stuff I apparently did / said in the past 6 hours over $20. The real DJ Runo attached a print from his PayPal to prove it was actually him. Upon discovering he'd fallen for a strategically executed piece of bait from a troll, Phil apologized and assured Runo he wouldn't be banned anywhere. While this narrative was closed in a relatively satisfactory way, a bag of worms bigger than anything Phil had ever dealt with up until this point was about to open in a fantastic way. In November of 2019, the bank foreclosed Phil's Connecticut condo because he stopped paying for the mortgage, despite it still having $100,000 or so left to pay.
Is
Phil
he
did not
just
address this
not
publicly,
addressing,
most
like, the
likely did not give
bankruptcy?
trolls any ammo. However, when the info made it to his audience, as it
Thomas, you're skipping right over the whole bankruptcy thing? I think someone going in, for bankruptcy, $500,000 would be something. Especially the recorded court appearance, too.
always does, trolls began saying that Phil should cash out some of his WWE Champions account to pay his debt off. Now, what could they possibly mean by this? As early as late 2014, Phil made posts on his forum about his addiction to mobile games, such as, I usually don't play any or at all unless I was during a break in my Twitch.
Now, this is a little deceiving because there is a video that, what was it? I think he was playing Hearthstone or something. And he was talking about how at Christmas time, before he was a YouTuber, people would ask him what he wants for Christmas. And he's like, well, I play this mobile game, so if you give me credits for it, I can use it towards that. That was before he was a YouTuber.
Stream, but I would pick it up again on breaks and in between streams, etc. Quite honestly, I have no idea how much money I've spent as I was alternating between 5 and 10 points frequently. I can tell you it had to be in the hundreds though, and I won't ever be doing that again. Over the course of time, he occasionally dropped on stream that he still played them, but if he had already spent hundreds of dollars on it back in 2014, how much money did he spend on it if you take into account the following years? Well, that's exactly what some of his detractors set out to discover. Upon finding an account in the game called They Call Me DSP, the same as Phil's Twitter handle, they began examining when that account was active and when Phil was tweeting. Lo and behold, the times matched up. Given that's no damn
the
piece of
technical
evidence,
wizards.
but it was something. Next up was ascertaining just how much money that account had spent in the game over the years. And the figure they came up with was a gruesome $38,976.
At the time, though.
He
At the
spent
time.
just shy of $40,000, which, to put things in perspective, maybe for some younger viewers who don't know how much like things cost, 40 grand can be a down payment on a house. 40 grand is like a new BMW 3 Series, okay?
That's
This
some
is
people
serious
whole
money. And
year
that's what he spent
payment
on a WWE mobile game. He tried to throw a little pity party over trolls annoying him about his absolute lack of concern with his money.
Some people
but this
don't even
time,
make that in
pity
a
was
whole
something
year.
very difficult to have. Phil was having some serious financial and professional trouble since the very beginning of the decade. There was no justification at any period in time for him to have spent that much on a mobile game. That is, unless some of his detractors, like Tevin, were right all along, and Phil's claims of being
Tevin's
poor
fault.
were to some degree an act. And he wasn't as worried about his money as he appeared on streams. In perhaps one of the best and funniest trolling campaigns done on him for the entirety of his career, trolls began paying for cameos from
Kurt
pro
Angle.
wrestlers to call out Phil on his mobile gaming addiction.
Hey, Phil Burnell, it's your Olympic hero Kurt Angle. And detractors have your number, buddy. I've seen
I
the
love
bank
it.
leaks. Jasper showed me your phone. We all know the WWE Champion's addiction is getting worse. Oh, it's true. It's damn true. And Cat deserves more than Burger King. And by the way, I'm watching you.
On top of a few other
There's a
wrestling-related
Ricky
people
Berwick.
and Ricky Berwick, we even get to see a familiar face chime in and give his very valuable 2 cents.
You're filing for
Oh,
bankruptcy.
God.
But the only reason you're filing for bankruptcy is because you
Look at that
dumped
hair.
$40,000 into a game called WWE Champions. You stupid, dumb, ignorant motherfucker.
As you heard Mr. 445 himself say, as of January 2020, it was official. Phil declared bankruptcy due to
Okay,
being
now
a
he's gonna
whopping
do it.
$500,000 in debt. Later on in the month, he made a video addressing it, explaining that $130K of it came
I got
from
my
15
timelines
different
mixed
credit
up, I
cards
guess.
he'd maxed out, along with a multitude of loans, some of which dated back to when he was still a professional Street Fighter player. The rest was mostly made up of the mortgages he was failing to pay. As stupid as someone needs to be to put themselves in a situation like this, Phil put his business degree to good use when he decided that he'd rather owe money to credit card companies than owe it to the IRS. However, he wasn't...
Yeah, and the whole thing about his foreclosure on his condo is at one point, and he said this on streams, that my whole deal with them is just, I'm just not going to pay them anymore. What's the worst could happen? Oh, Phil, you're an
savvy
idiot.
enough to stop himself from lying on his bankruptcy filing. As detractors scoured through it, they were quickly met with the claim that Phil had no pets, personal electronics, or collectibles, all of which were verifiably false. Additionally, his business expenses listed him as spending up to $9,000 a month on his streaming, something that seems unlikely to say the least. The general public immediately deduced that Phil was writing off the money he gambled away on WWE champions as a business expense. This is why, when someone files for
$5,000
bankruptcy,
a month,
it's followed
dude.
by a hearing, which trolls made sure to get access to. While we don't have video of it happening, the audio track is available online for anyone to peruse.
Aw,
During the hearing,
come
Phil
on.
misconstrued a question about his purchase
Thomas.
of a subscription to the WWE Network channel as if it were related to his purchases in WWE Champions. Soon, a detractor somehow managed to sneak their way in and pose as a creditor, only to press Phil on his business expenses. The unnamed detractor asked for Phil to itemize his business expenses, meaning to lay them out one by one, which was something that Phil couldn't do without revealing his Champions addiction. However, the detractor was caught, as his claim to be a representative of Citibank was scrutinized. Later on, another troll joined the call and began playing clips of DSP playing Dark Souls,
Yeah, why am
which
I
amused
toxic?
everyone present.
Why am I poison? Why am I toxic?
Ich habe
you have the identification information with you?
Despite attempts to derail Phil's defense, in May
Yeah,
of
that was
2020,
a dumb
Phil's
thing to do
bankruptcy
during
went
that.
through, and $130,000
Don't make
of his
Phil into
debt
an
was
even bigger
defaulted
victim.
as his credit plummeted into non-existence. While talking about his mangled credit score, he mentions that he's waiting until his credit gets better so that he can take out more loans. Again, what he means here is that he wants to transfer his debt from owing taxes to the federal government to owing money to creditors. While this is a smart thing to do in this situation, it's obvious that as soon as he gets his hands on surplus money, it's going to go to one of his addictions or needlessly expensive hobbies. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Phil is approaching his 40s right now, and eventually he'll simply be too old to work and will effectively be thrown into the wood chipper that is the infinite debt cycle he locked himself into. At this point, Phil was entirely financially dependent on the donations of a group of people affectionately dubbed whales by his detractors. Just a few of DSP's watchers were responsible for most of the money donated to
Yeah,
him.
like 4.
One man in particular, who went by King Tut, donated thousands by himself. Appearing suddenly in August 2017, Tut wasn't an old-time fan of DSPs, meaning he wasn't one of these stragglers from pre-lolcow DSP era who felt some parasocial affection for the man. So it's really hard to deduce why he decided out of nowhere to dump as much money as he did into Phil's black hole of debt. Being as much of a pay pig as Tut was
sexually
had his
attracted
benefits,
to him
so
like
he could get away
OIC.
with pretty much anything, from being toxic in chat and insulting other viewers, all the way to trying to control Phil's streams altogether. While the pay pig privilege lasted for a good few months, eventually it did get to the point where the mods decided Tut had to go. Once he was banned, he became furious and demanded that Phil refund all the donations he'd ever made. This attempt at getting a refund was neglected by Phil, and Tut proceeded to file a fraud claim on PayPal to get his money back. The thing is, PayPal is so broken that this attempt actually posed a serious threat to Phil's entire operation.
I'm surprised he didn't
According
do
to
the
Phil,
whole
this was
King of
Tut's plan
Suffering
all
in this.
along, and he was a secret detractor. So
Or
much so
even
that he
the,
supposedly made
give her a
appearances to
pill
DSP
and
Hater podcast after the
give her a
chargeback,
pill and
claiming
leave
that he
her
got
there.
all of his money back and screwed Phil over. Phil's story, however, is that he successfully kept all the money and Tut's PayPal shenanigans floundered, but there's no way to know who's telling the truth in this situation.
Probably
But
not
while
Phil.
Tut's case is a clearer-cut situation, there's another case where Phil took out some of his anger at one of his mods, despite the latter not really deserving it. Swaggins, another one of DSP's
God.
followers, gave a tip to
That
Phil
baby
on how to
back
beat one of the
bitch.
bosses in the Resident Evil 2 remix,
He's a fucking
only for
cuck.
Phil to misconstrue it, blame him, and lash out. As a result of this outburst, Swaggins proceeded to deliberately unban a detractor to spite Phil. In a stream of Sekiro that took place soon after, Swaggins found himself extremely annoyed when Phil relapsed back to his old ways of complaining about a game when it wasn't easy enough for him to play it successfully. But DSP, having none of it, said, "I'm at a time in my life where I don't have time to deal with it. Swaggins is just mad that he told me to do something wrong during Resident Evil 2 and got blown up for it. Then that I plain don't like the combat in Sekiro, and he's so hurt by that. So he was a fair weather friend who wanted to mod when I agree with him, but as soon as there's a major disagreement,
fair-weather
don't talk
friend.
about it to me at all, but instead freak out
Fucking
and leave.
alien.
That is kitty stuff, and I'm far beyond it, to the point where I'm not having a second John Rambo situation, so he can just get out and stay out. That is literally what happened with Rambo all over again. Nope, I'm done with that crap."
That's-
Swaggins also had a response in order. "Stupid kitty stuff, as you say
Yeah, that's nothing like Rambo. So you're saying Rambo started criticizing you, so you cut him out of your life?
all the time, the world isn't black and white. To think it's just because of Sekiro is asinine. I've given so much, spent so much time trying to help moderation, only to be shown disrespect from Resident Evil 2 to now. All the excuses, the I did nothing wrong mentality, and general toxicity have driven me away, and I no longer wish to be a part of
Exactly.
it. You say all the time that you're open to the
But
opinions
this
of
cuck
others,
came
but when it
back
doesn't
to-
align with yours, you dismiss it and proceed to shit all over it. Sekiro is an example of that. My time is valued elsewhere. Twitch should be a place to escape problems, not listen to someone else's. The amount of money talk has been such a turn-off and will not help with long-term growth. Many have contacted me questioning whether or not you're even telling the truth at this point, and generally say that they're tired of all the taxes talk. I'm talking about actual fans here, not detractors. I tell them that we can only take your word about it at the end of the day. Not much later, Swaggins lost
Look
his
at it,
mod
DSP
privileges, and as
Punisher.
yet another DSP fan died, a detractor was born and took another moderator with him. Eventually, Swaggins did return to DSP streams
Yeah, like
after
a
a
cuck.
hiatus, but his hefty donations did not come back with him.
That is a positive. Chapter 6, the vest is yet to
Despite
come.
all of the financial
Oh my
troubles
god, the
threatening
vest
his
streak.
livelihood, Phil would soon find a new outlet, in a saga so perplexing and coincidental that it inadvertently ushered in a DSP renaissance, all thanks to a vest. While reacting to an old DSP video from October 2011, fans demanded that Phil wear the vest he was wearing in it, and he conceded. Upon a cursory investigation of his wardrobe, he found it and put it on. For a moment, fans and detractors alike united to be perplexed by the vest, to the point that when Phil wasn't wearing it during a stream,
Yeah,
they
he looks looks
where it
autistic.
was. Phil, seeing the success of the vest, along with his cowboy hat, stopped counting Twitch bits and tips towards his goals and instead encouraged users to donate directly to his PayPal, which allowed him to get the money instantly and without splitting the revenue with Twitch. He started monetizing the vest as much as he could, setting it as a reward if he hit a specific amount he wanted to get. The vest became a daily occurrence, and people began counting how many days Phil reached his goal of $100 consecutively in a brief period dubbed the vest streak. This lasted for a strong 29 days. Unfortunately, disaster struck, and Phil came down with an ear infection that made him unable to stream. To notify his fans, he said, "All bad news. I've come down with a bad ear infection causing excruciating pain. I can't stream when it feels like I have a knife in my ear. I'll update everyone later today on how I'm doing. Sorry. I've had it for days."
Oh my
but
God,
didn't say
that
a word about
picture
it,
of
hoping it would
Phil.
just go away. It did not. It got horribly worse. While this seems inoffensive on its face, the actual disaster came as a consequence of that ear infection. From responding mean-spiritedly to someone on Twitch that presumed that the ear infection had healed a day later, to being extremely defensive and gratuitously engaging in back and forths on Twitter over the authenticity of this infection, Phil was...
Now, I think he actually did have an ear infection. Now, the reason everyone says he does is because he barely showers. So when you have the headphones on, that's going to cause the bacteria and everything to grow and get worse. Phil, wash yourself. We seen you in the shower in those videos. Shower more often, Phil. You disgusting pig.
Giving people reason to doubt his whole story. Meanwhile, detractors were pointing out that hiding his ailments was something Phil had never done up until now, and that he continued to stream while wearing headphones without ever mentioning that he had an ear infection to his audience, despite having no reason to keep it a secret whatsoever. Regardless, despite the debate as to whether this lack of stream constituted a break in the vest streak, Phil continued to do the vest gimmick, eventually hitting a milestone of 73 days with the vest. This meant DSP earned at least $100 every day for over 2 months. On the 73rd, he miscalculated the tips by $9 and came dangerously close to not hitting the goal and breaking the streak. But, lo and behold, it still stood. The vest streak bravely marched...
Yeah, because it didn't get the full number that he said. Because like Thomas here said, he miscalculated, so he was actually under the number needed for the vest. So it should have stopped at that number, but he's like, no, I'm just going to add some more numbers here. We're going to continue the streak.
Forward onto the 100-day mark, which Phil referred to as the Vestival. He also revealed that if another goal was hit, he would put on yet another hideous vest. This one a shiny silver, which
I
he
forgot
dubbed
about
Platinum
this.
DSP. The streak raged on for another 50
He had a
days
double
before
vest
finally
streak at one
DSP
point.
mentions that it was starting to
So
become...
it was some of the stupidest stuff he tried. So at one point, he had, if I get to $200, I'll wear 2 vests at the same time. So one on each shoulder. There was spinning in his chair. If people donate to me, I'll eat Skittles. He had, oh, I'm going to put this roll of toilet paper on my head if I get a certain amount of money.
A lot harder to hit the tips goal and to put on the accursed DSP vest. This was a few weeks after Phil was hit by PayPal with $800 worth of chargebacks. So as you can imagine,
I don't
he got
believe
a little
that.
desperate. At this point, Phil's scheme was becoming irkingly transparent. There were times when the vest streak business overtook the stream entirely, with Phil coming close to guilt-tripping his audience about
us
the streak
versus the
potentially
trolls,
ending.
dude.
When it started
Gotta
out
keep the
extremely
streak
positive,
going.
the vest was being absorbed into the general dark cloud of DSP's debt-mongering and e-begging. More time goes by, and as DSP was approaching the 200 mark, an anonymous user would DMCA strike DSP's Twitch account, suspending him off the platform temporarily and pushing him onto YouTube. Eventually, he resolved the issue with Twitch and returned to celebrate day 200 of the streak. When the time came, Phil said that only now, with the vest's aid, was he able to start sleeping soundly at night without worrying about his unpaid bills. From his point of view,
course, he made like
everything was on the
$20,000.
turnaround for him. By day 250, he starts talking about buying a PS5 with the money. No matter how much things seem to turn around, Phil continues to be Phil, this time wearing a valet
And spending
uniform.
money.
For some reason, it was only after 276 days that the streak came to an end, as Phil streamed himself playing Paper Mario and the Origami King. Despite preparing for this day for months, it wasn't easy on poor old Phil, who probably made 30 grand by playing video games with a vest
remember,
on for 9
Mario's a
months.
detractor,
He becomes
dude.
extremely upset at his audience for not keeping the streak alive, but ultimately he accepts that it's over.
Because there was a lot of support tonight, and it was mostly subs and cheers. So I don't know where, why people did that, but that's going to be, this is it. This is literally the end of the stream.
I remember he stayed
told
like,
you guys I couldn't go late tonight. So
what was
the
it,
stream
5 to
about
10
end.
minutes
And
extra?
Unless we get a tip right now at the very tail end of the stream, and there's no time for a vest, the stream is over. So unless we get something right now, this is it.
Look how
However, what wasn't
grimy
over
and
was his
greasy that
e-begging,
is.
which made many of his viewers wonder, what did he do with that nearly 30 grand he
Exactly.
made off of the vest streak?
What happened to the vest streak money? It went to pay for stuff, genius. Bills, back taxes. Like, it paid for
See
a
his
tremendous
eyes
amount
just
of
go away
things
there? He's thinking of a lie.
What do you think it did? Oh my god, people are so dumb.
The nervousness and the vague pivot from bills and back taxes to a tremendous amount of things around here pretty much confirmed for much of his following that he didn't change even a bit in regards to how he handled his money. Phil's online inner circle would be rocked when a mod named Anonymous leaked the logs and chats of his private server uploaded onto YouTube in early 2021. Anonymous, who had worked alongside Phil for years, would concede it was time to join the dark side, removing himself as a moderator of Phil's Twitch midstream, but not without changing the title of the stream to DSP Doxed Pew Dubs before he did so as a parting shot.
Now, technically, wouldn't it be the light side? So if Phil is dark side Phil and you're going to the other side, shouldn't it be the light side? Just saying.
Phil doxed PW Dubs? No, I didn't. I've never doxed anyone.
As you heard, Phil claimed he had never doxed anyone. However, documented history tells quite a different story.
Oh, by the way, I have your IP, I have your name, and I have your address. So, congratulations. You fucked up.
Anonymous's leaks didn't do much damage to Phil's reputation, partly because it was already destroyed beyond repair, partly because there wasn't a lot of incriminating stuff in there that the detractors didn't already know about. Anonymous eventually revealed the reason he turned on Phil, saying, "The greatest tactic in Phil's playbook is to characterize his critics as evil, malicious, and mentally ill trolls seeking attention. When he made me a moderator in October of 2017, I was a mod for 1 day before he removed me. A troll started insulting me for being gay, which I don't mind. They escalated it to mocking me for something that happened during my childhood, telling me that's why I'm gay, and called me a P-word. I timed them out for the rest of the stream. Phil was bombarded with emails complaining about me being a bad mod. He panicked, threw me under the bus, talked poorly about me behind my back to the troll, and removed me hastily. I emailed him and let him know what happened. His response was that he believed me fully,
he doesn't
and I was
care
still absolutely in the wrong.
how people
He
are treated as long as he
reprimanded
gets
me
his
because
money.
He felt I had no reason to ever tell anyone that
Look
I was
at Canadian
abused, and I
Kirk
had
with
to
all
keep
his
that to
racist
myself.
stuff.
He refused to restore my mod status and gave me the same treatment he tried to give his whales. He tried to dangle it over my head. As it turns out, the mod Discord server was just the tip of the iceberg, as Anonymous
Yeah, the one that he
released a
doesn't
plethora
have,
of
dude.
information that was previously unknown. The user mentioned in the title that Mouse put on Phil's stream, probably along with many others, was asked by Phil to provide their personal information in order to get unbanned.
Yeah, their
I'm almost
license,
legally
right?
obliged to say, no matter how dedicated a troll you are, why on God's green earth would you give your personal information to anybody to get unbanned from a Twitch chat? I mean, unless you're a kid, I can't imagine that being a
Yeah, 'cause I'm
reasonable
pretty sure he gave him
decision.
his license
Phil went directly to
with
the
his
private
address
moderator
and
Discord
real
server
name
and
and
desperately
photo.
tried to establish what had happened while he was live
And then he
streaming.
showed it
Because
to
of the
his,
trolling today,
mod
I ventured onto the forums.
Discord.
Someone there has posted us impersonating at Anani, who insists it's not him. They're saying they're going to post definitive proof that is somehow going to incriminate me, but haven't been that specific. They think it will be evidence that this Discord exists, although that doesn't actually prove anything. They are somehow convinced themselves, insanely, that as long as I'm using Discord in some capacity, that somehow everything they've made up about me in the last year and a half is true. They are hinging all this on the belief that I had a falling out with @Anani based on his Twitch suspension, which of course isn't true. They think I demodded and banned him from the channel, lol. So whoever this is apparently impersonating him to get me to think it's him and get rid of him. Soon it dawned on Phil that he was being fooled, and Mouse was indeed the leaker.
It's not that hard
he
to
proceeded
fool
confront him in the
Darkside
server.
Phil.
@Anonymous, are you still sitting on detractor streams talking about me? Because they are saying this is your YouTube handle that you just created, and I'd like to know what gives. Like, I'm giving you a huge benefit of the doubt here, but I'm hearing from every possible direction that you're actually trying to cause drama for me. They're also saying that both Anonymous and @KingGoken talk to people behind the scenes and both confirm this Discord exists. Not that it matters, that leaked a year ago, but somehow they think it's news. Is it all an impersonation? And are we actually talking about this Discord server outside of here? I was under the impression we all want this thing kept secret so they can't try to harass us. So why the hell is it becoming public knowledge? Phil tried to defend himself and explain that the information PewDub sent to him was to prove that his account was the real one to ward off impersonators. That would be a convincing defense, were it not for the fact that Phil had previously bragged about having people's doxes multiple times. The one thing that did sap some of the
everything's on
steam
film,
off of Mouse's
Phil.
expose were the accusations of heinous stuff, meaning zoophilia and zoophilia. Even in the DSP video, I cannot seem to rid myself of these people. When asked why he was following zoo accounts, Mouse replied that he was doing it to see their tweets and befriend them, the same reason he follows everyone. He added, "Bruh, I'm a furry. We buy and sell exact replicas of animal genitalia. While I certainly don't F animals,
Animal
I'm not above speaking with people
genitalia.
who do." Members of the Kiwi Farm
I
did
don't
not take
understand that
kindly to
stuff
the
at all.
revelations regarding
I don't get
Anonymouse's
it.
supposed predilections. Anonymous is into zoo stuff and likes stuff like this. Make fun of this stuff.
That's
what
your
you want,
audience,
Will.
Phil.
I told you ages ago he should be told to F off. He's an adult, and he's following this teenager that claims he wants to F animals. Are we really going to ignore this, but poke fun at our Canadian Coomer? Our side really isn't any better than Phil's. We are far worse. Reprobates like this adult man taking pictures of himself in a full diaper, wanting to F fur babies, and a zoophile are the people that detractors look up to. His attempts to apologize for what he describes as tantamounts to deliberately telling teens that zoophilia is okay weren't heeded by members who believed it.
I have no
totally
idea what the
insufficient for
fuck
the
that's
extent
all
of his
about.
actions. People pointed out that
And I
first
don't
he
want to
lied
know about.
knowingly interacting with minors about this kind of stuff on Twitter. Then when an example was brought up, he acted like that was the only time it ever happened. The chips were stacking against Anonymous at a very fast rate, and today he too has his own dedicated page on the Kiwi Farms. Eventually, Mouse reappeared to try and justify his actions, saying the following: "I'm sorry for returning. The point of going away for the prior month was to reflect and start getting help. It's hard to make it clear how deeply I regret my actions without fixating on how it'll be perceived. Whether wording it the wrong way will sound disingenuous or make it sound like I'm downplaying everything or turning it into an emotionally manipulative pity party by oversharing my issues, etc. I'm absolutely disgusted with myself. It's pathetic trying to hang on like this. I'm sorry for everything I've been called out over. I should have done that first and foremost. This false confidence in my return is blatantly motivated by a desire to save face. I deleted my other accounts that deprived me of access to my terminally online life and forced me to get help because I knew I couldn't resist coming back to either chase clout or lolcows for cheap ego boosts. Clearly, you can't delete your account on Kiwi Farms. My only other option is changing my password to a randomized string and logging off forever." And so he did, as his account has been inactive since mid-2022.
Oh, he just,
A
like,
55
basically
page
left
leak
the
of a
internet?
conversation between Anonymous and a user called Pamperchew came out in August of 2022 and quickly was archived by users seeking to preserve evidence of the two's abhorrent conversations, with a vast quantity of screenshots provided. And I'll let you guess as to the quality of discourse in such a document. Meanwhile, despite having triumphantly served this upheaval, Phil was facing yet another threat to his livelihood. Twitch terminated his partnership, and soon his entire account was set to be closed permanently. In an emergency video uploaded to YouTube, Phil demanded an apology from Twitch regarding their treatment of him, despite detractors pointing out that the partnership allowed Twitch to ban users for any reason at any time. Honestly, even though that may be the case, I still feel bad for Phil either way. If it was up to me, his Twitch would not be banned. The official reason was that Phil had allegedly said a hateful slur at one point during a stream. While Phil reacted to the partnership termination in a
he said many hateful
US
slurs.
law as if it had any relevance to the situation, Twitch eventually decided to lift his channel suspension and acknowledge that he was wrongfully penalized. However, he had a grudge against Twitch and was already in the process of moving his operation over to YouTube. Funnily enough, in May of 2021, despite refuting the allegations of hateful language in his content, Phil almost certainly dropped the gamer word on accident during another stream. Later that year, over the course of a few weeks in September, hackers were able to socially engineer Bank of America to give them access to Phil's bank statements by using public info of his that was available, and the findings were intriguing to say the least. Over the course of the better part of 2 years, Phil spent approximately $190,485. Of that nearly $200,000, $3,000 went to alcohol, $6,000 was spent on restaurants and takeout, $11,000 on groceries, $26,000 on taxes, $33,000 on mortgage payments, and last but not least, $45,000 on microtransactions.
Like,
Not
Phil
only
doesn't know
including
how to live
WWE
within his
champions,
means.
but PayPal and iTunes. It appears that the detractors, and most prominently Tevin, were right all along.
Look at Curly
and Phil
from the Three
aggressively
Stooges
played
over
up his
here.
financial tightness to get more donations, while he spent it on stupid garbage constantly. When
That's
Phil
the
did
DSP
address
way.
it, he didn't actually. He just claimed he suffered identity theft, which is actually true, and purposefully left the rest of the details as vague as he could, as to not raise attention to the glaring fact that perhaps the most damning piece of information on him ever was now public. Now comes the end of 2021.
all those places were
when
in
Phil decides to make some
Renton
changes to his
that
content.
they're
First and
bought
foremost,
at.
the biggest change would be dropping the King of Hate moniker that had defined his career, appearing on merchandise, his own forums, and even his vlogging channel that he'd also retired on the 3rd of January in a video titled, "Goodbye, this channel is retired. Head to DSP Gaming and thank you for 10 awesome years of vlogging." Today, the channel does remain online, but only as an archive. However, Phil's attempts at rebranding would do nothing to curb the nearly...
No. DSP Reacts is not an archive channel. That's his React channel. That is still active. Barely active, but it's active. Thomas.
2-decade legacy of the moniker, and more widely his online reputation. A critique that underlined this decision of
there's Sir
rebranding
Moist.
was that Phil only did it after he got the attention of Moist Critical, despite Charlie saying the same things many people had said before, that Phil guilt-tripped viewers over
he had a
money
larger,
and branded himself on begging. Phil took the opportunity to do a
sub-base.
Boogie 2988 and performatively embrace the criticism to look better. Unfortunately, Phil then suffered another series of copyright strikes on his channel, DSP Gaming, after a detractor, Dayglow Hour, posed as a professional video editor, creating various intros and bumpers for Phil to use before his streams, only to then claim them once they were in enough uploads. Just a couple of weeks later, however, the strikes were cleared and his channel was back to its original state. Attempts to mess with Phil's income didn't stop there, however. In September of 2022, a user named MusicMouse7 tweeted to Stream Elements, the company who manages Phil's tips, linking them to a 13-year-old clip where DSP makes a pretty bold
but you
statement.
don't know if that's the particular reason.
So began the chain of events that ultimately led to Phil's termination from Stream Elements. Phil took to Twitter to message the company, telling them his tips page became a 404 and asked if it's all related to mass reporting that took place regarding the TF2 incident. Following day, Phil opened up
it could
a
have
link
been
directly
many
to
different
PayPal
people
for all stream donations, and now he has to
tagging
manually
them
manage his
and
PayPal account and
contacting
the
them.
donation sent, further unable to have automatic animation pop-ups. He also has to play these himself. Phil also instituted a brand new policy, adding the disclaimer, no refunds to his account.
Which is
Despite
not
attempts by
enforceable.
trolls to report the account, Phil continues to use it to this day. In addition to taking this L, it seems DSP was breaking his promise to not play WWE champions anymore.
The quality of the video is a little poor, but if you are familiar with the game, you can make out what is on Phil's phone. This is the Brawl feature within the WWE Champions application game.
The rest of Phil's 2022 wasn't anything new. He raged, e-begged, and guilt-tripped his audience over lack of
Oh, but
donations while playing
2023 is
Elden Ring,
wild.
called his audience bigoted when they made fun of the
Karen outfit.
conspicuously feminine Halloween costume of Ken from Street Fighter, among other charismatic and lovable activities. The most recent major situation in Phil's career started with a podcast called Side Scrollers. This particular episode of the show starred online personality Adam Krigler and creator of the Screw Attack video game network, Craig Skitzimus, otherwise known by his online pseudonym Stuttering Craig, and they'd be interviewing the one and only Philip Burnell. As he always does given the opportunity, Phil used this time to defend himself against the accusations of detractors, and like every previous instance of it, it didn't go that well. Some of Phil's shortcomings in the PR department were very familiar, such as him essentially admitting that he gave his viewers no value back for what they donated to him. However, some were novel.
Yeah.
During the stream, the topic of
Really good,
WWE
meaningful
champions
content,
came up,
dude.
and Phil instantly
Very
became
robust.
a nervous wreck. The interviewers seemed familiar with it and effectively pressed him on the topic, eventually circling in for the kill and telling Phil that if he wanted to, he could prove that the WWE Champions account that he had spent tens of thousands of dollars on the game wasn't his. All he had to do was show his account to a neutral third party that could verify his claims to fans and detractors alike. But Phil was not open to doing so and preferred to stick with his theory that a detractor of his spent that money just to frame him and incriminate
Yeah,
him,
and all the
which further
purchases
solidified
were
his guilt.
in
You have my
Renton,
email.
Washington.
And this is
Just happens
this
to
is
be
a
where he
small ask.
lives.
It's also a big ask. You can say what you want. Will you, and you can say no, and I'm totally fine with this, but just confidentially between us, will you send me a screenshot of your account, of your WWE account, and just so I personally, I will not share your name to anybody, but just between us.
Man, I have to think about
and vouch for you.
Yeah, and I will vouch for you either way.
I have to think about what kind of risk that. I don't want to say. Here's the thing.
What kind of risk would
I'll
you take
consider it,
there?
But I can't agree to it yet. I have to.
It's not like he's
see
going to
exactly
show everyone.
What's the risk? You know.
Another topic covered during the podcast was DSP's interactions with Keemstar,
50K
the official
Keem.
side character of every lolcow story, apparently.
That is true.
He has to pop up. Keem had recently decided to move past Phil's drama with him over the coverage of the incident from a couple of years prior to make him an offer. A total of $50,000 to join the lolcow podcast
sign-on bonus,
alongside Wings
remember.
of Redemption and Boogie 2988.
I got a brilliant idea. Why don't I take the three of you, put you on a podcast, we will call it the Lol Call Podcast.
In an extremely unfortunate turn of events, Phil turned it down on principle and sought to make his thoughts clear on the matter during the side scrollers.
Yeah, because he talked to his wife
Some
about
kind
it.
of like a big project he wanted to be involved in. I don't know exactly what. Let me explain. So he says, well, I don't want to talk about it in a DM. We got to have a phone call. I'm like, okay, that's reasonable, right? Let's have a phone call. Here's my number. Here's when to call me. I'm available at these times of the day. Okay? I wait. The call never comes. It's been like 2 days. The call never comes. Maybe he's not serious about it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in this guy's head. All of a sudden, I'm on streams. He starts calling me when I'm on streams. I'm
Yeah,
like,
how dare
I
you?
I don't know what's going on.
How
Again.
dare you, Keem?
So I DM him after the fact. I'm like, hey, you want to? So basically, it's like stupid telephone phone tag. The guy won't even.
How dare you not call him on his time he desired? And how dare you offer him $50,000?
A $50 donation to the stream saying, Phil, nobody cares about your history with Keemstar. Why are you above a $50K sign-on bonus for a podcast, but will ask for tips for groceries the next day? It makes no sense. Viewers began to speculate that the real reason was actually that Phil didn't need the money as much as he pretended he did. Eventually, Keem himself joined the podcast and the two went at it for an hour or so, getting very little resolved in the process. The aftermath of the stream resulted in only more derision between Phil and the members of the side-scrollers. The day after the now infamous interview, the group uploaded a discussion called Dark Side Phil Aftermath, where they went over how the DSP episode went.
Oh yeah, where they made quote-unquote
$20,000 questions such
in
as
those
the
2000
WWE Champions fiasco. The discussion prompted him to say they betrayed him and describe the podcast negatively. While he addressed the Aftermath video, he made the mistake of mentioning Keemstar in a negative light, which prompted Keem to chime in again. In a tweet, Keem reiterated that DSP was no longer being considered for the LOCAL podcast due to his inability to answer important emails in a timely manner. In another instance, Keem said, I have set up interviews with DSP's family and friends. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Apparently, unlike him, they like money. Keep in mind, DSP totally unprovoked talks ill about me when I was retiring. I barely even...
Yeah, because supposedly, episode 4 of the LOWCAL podcast is supposed to be about DSP, and Keem tweeted out that she's coming on. I've talked to her. Get ready, DSP. So, someone also went to Jenna, Kat's sister, on Instagram and asked, oh, did Keem approach you for this? And she said no. So it's not Jenna. Best scenario, it's Panda. But can you imagine if Kat actually shows up on there? That'd be hilarious.
Knew him, and he doesn't know me. After that, he was hurting for money, so I offered him $50K for a podcast job, and he disrespected me again. After that, I had a peaceful chat with him on Side Scroller's pod that settled the beef. 24 hours later, he was talking smack about me again. After that, he tried to steal my podcast idea. So I don't want to hear that I'm harassing him. I'm simply responding. When Keemstar announced he'd arranged interviews with members of Phil's family, DSP responded saying he didn't care since he had no contact with any of his family besides his parents. So Keem would get biased information from people only interested in the money. During one of his periodic lamentations, Phil mentions having developed severe trust issues and having an inability to have friends. But he blames trolls for this instead of blaming himself.
It's hard for me to trust anyone. You wanna know why?
Do
Because
these
so many
streams.
people have kind of screwed me over time. People who swear to me, don't worry, we're in it for the best of intentions, and we're here to do this or that, and then what happens, right? And it's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, fool me 7 times, right?
On June 24th, 2023, DSP celebrated his 15th anniversary of being
Yeah, it was a sad event.
on YouTube. 15 years.
He barely made any money.
64,000 videos on the DSP Gaming channel alone, countless hours of live streaming, half a lifetime's worth of subpar content.
How sad is that
you
you have
even
to
believe it got to this point. Unlike
set up
other
your own
locals who have one
party.
or two gigantic character flaws that are like...
Yeah, because imagine that. You got 15-year career, and you have to throw yourself a 15-year celebration, and you barely get any money from it.
Like genuinely just making them unfit for society in general. DSP is kind of a different beast. He has no particularly grievous offense towards other people. Instead, he has an unending series of small offenses he has no interest in taking accountability for. He's not extraordinary whatsoever, and that's precisely the appeal. Disliking him isn't a race, it's a fucking marathon. His detractors will willingly sit through his content slop just to bask in how underwhelming it is. Every little self-serving lie, every e-beg, every insult to the
we're waiting
audience,
for that
it
one
adds
moment.
up to the
It
phenomenon
all falls
known as
apart.
pignosis, the inability to
What?
fully stop following what Phil is up to.
Did you just say detractors have pignosis?
Precisely the appeal. Disliking him isn't a race, it's a fucking marathon. His detractors will willingly sit through his content slop just to bask in how underwhelming it is. Every little self-serving lie, every e-beg, every insult to the audience, it adds up to the phenomenon known as pignosis, the inability to fully stop following what Phil is up to. DSP is like McDonald's, where you know you're getting a bland...
No. Thomas, you got pignosis wrong. It's not the detractors, it's his dents. They're the ones that have pignosis. He's got the money kinesis member too.
kind of soggy experience, but every once in a while, you just find yourself coming back, okay? He's a low-skill, menial job worker who stumbled into being a professional content creator and got addicted to it, and no matter how much negative attention or debt his attachment to his online personality incurs him, he keeps on going. Phil is not destined to be an online personality. He doesn't have the talent, he doesn't put in the effort, he has no skills, and yet every single day, he's struggling against fate itself by not giving up. He's a Let's Player who's bad at games. Took 3 years after it was already the norm for him to start doing direct capture, and has never hired an editor in his life. He doesn't behave responsibly in the face of negative consequences, or his inability to manage his professional life whatsoever. He defaulted on over $100,000 worth of debt that he took out on credit cards so that he could pay his taxes. Even though he knew his taxes were just going to continue to accrue, and he truly has no hope of paying them. But he simply does not stop. DSP is like Albert Camus's The Myth of Sisyphus. He doesn't have what it takes to perform his task, but he's going to continue trying regardless.
What a
The
metaphor.
struggle itself toward being a content creator is enough to fill his heart for the time being. One must imagine that Phil is happy, or at least he thinks he's where he's supposed to be.
Hey, so that was a hell of a documentary. That was 2 hours there. Man, it was very well done, very well put. I will say this. You spent a lot of time on the background of DSP, of like his early years. A lot of that could have been condensed up, because a lot of people are more concerned with the modern day Phil. Because you already have, let's say, Down the Rabbit Hole and all those documentaries on Phil. Because it seemed like you rushed through the modern era when you could have taken your time and expanded. But it was a good documentary overall. I liked it. There was some things that were inaccurate, but overall I enjoyed it. And I hope you guys enjoyed that react as well. Click that like, share the video, leave a comment below, hit subscribe. Go subscribe to my other channels in the details and on the description. My other channel, I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, so please do me a favor on that. And as always, I love each and every one of you. Hope you're all safe, healthy, and happy. Peace and love.